The seal on Seo Gyeongho's wrist cracked with the sound of breaking bone. The first minister's jade seal fell onto the stone floor of the throne room and split in two. Emperor Li Jiwan had torn it off himself. He smiled. He raised a cup of jasmine tea to his lips and took a sip. He always drank this tea during sentencing. He said the aroma set off the taste of justice. 30 years of service to 3 emperors. 30 years of decrees and reforms. 30 years of shaping the architecture of an entire empire. All of it now lay on the floor in shards of jade. The numbers on the old man's wrist crept downward. Platinum, jade, gold, silver, bronze. Bronze 1. The throne's weight had dropped from 0 to 1. The name Seo Gyeongho began to fade from the black marble pillar in the corner of the hall. The registrar priest, Yoon Sung-ho, silently ran his brush along the line. He erased it, as if the man had never existed. 5 princesses knelt before the throne. Chae Yuna, 16 years old, bronze 180. She was trembling so violently that her teeth were chattering. Han Sol-mi, 19, bronze 200. She stared at the floor and held her breath. Baek Young-hee, 21, bronze 190. She bit her lip until it bled. So Ha-in, 22, bronze 210. The only one who kept her back straight. Im Da-rae, 18, bronze 170. She cried silently. 5 heiresses of the defeated younger branches. 5 seals reduced to 0. 5 names that, in a minute, would be erased from the registry pillars across the entire Hwagyong continent. And the emperor set down his cup and nodded at them. He said the old man could take these dolls with him. He said it was cold in the north. Perhaps they would keep each other warm before they died. The courtiers laughed. 100 people in silk robes. People for whom Seo Gyeongho had written the laws. People whose children he had placed in positions of power. People who had bowed to him every morning for 30 years straight. They laughed. A young general stepped out of the ranks. Park Sung-min, gold 7200. Broad shoulders. The jade sash of a newly appointed official. A former student of Seo Gyeongho. The very same boy whom the old man had taken in from a border village 20 years ago. Whom he had fed. Whom he had taught to wield a brush and a sword. Whom he had paved the way to the court. Park Sung-min approached the old man. He looked down on him and spat at his feet. He said that his teacher's handwriting had always been terrible. The courtiers laughed even louder. Park Sung-min turned to the emperor and bowed. He received his appointment, overseer of the exiles. Formally, to ensure the exiles did not return. In reality, to finish off those whom the sentence had failed to kill. Seo Gyeongho knelt on his knees, 72 years old, his seal stripped away, his rank reduced to 0, his name erased. And at that moment, another man awoke within his body. Not the old advisor, not the calligrapher, not the minister. A corporate strategist, a specialist in hostile takeovers, a man who, in another world, had dismantled companies worth billions. A man who knew that the strongest move is made after you've been declared bankrupt. Memories surged in a double torrent. 30 years of imperial bureaucracy, and a whole lifetime from another world. Economics, logistics, military strategy, agronomy, metallurgy, intelligence networks. All of this settled over the reset seal like an invisible layer. The seal on his wrist hadn't gone out. It had gone into stealth mode. Bronze 1 on the surface, but inside, what's something else? Something not in the registry. The mentor class. The old man slowly rose from his knees. He looked at the emperor. The emperor was no longer paying attention. He was drinking tea, leafing through the next verdict. Together with Gyeongho, he looked at the teapot on the brazier. He memorized its shape. He memorized the steam rising from the spout. He memorized the temperature. And he promised himself one thing. When he returned that tea, it would be cold. The guards shoved them out through the side gate, the 6 of them. the old man and 5 girls, without belongings, without food, without weapons, wearing only the clothes on their backs. A cart was waiting at the gate. The driver didn't even look at them. He just cracked the whip on the horse. The road north, through 3 provinces, across the Great Range, into the wild lands, where exiles die of starvation within the first week, or in the second week at the hands of savages. Cho Yuna sat in the corner of the wagon and stared at her hands, at the faded seal. Bronze minus 180 had turned into bronze minus 12 after being reset to 0. She couldn't even ignite a key fire. She asked the old man why they'd been spared at all. Seo Gyeongho didn't answer right away. He stared at the road, at the dust behind the wheels, at the capital shrinking behind them. Then he said that the dead don't pay taxes, and the exiles bring weight to the emperor simply by existing outside the wall. Every exile is an entry in the register that demonstrates the throne's mercy, political accounting. Han Somi raised her head. Something flashed in her eyes. She understood. The old man noticed that look and took note of it. A talent for numbers. It'll come in handy. 3 days' journey. Rain. Cold. 1 flatbread for the 6 of them. She and Ha-in divided it into equal pieces. Im-Dare found a wild root by the roadside and said it was edible. Baek-yeon-hee just watched the guards. She counted them, memorized their faces. On the 4th day, the convoy stopped at a stone bridge spanning a gorge. The convoy commander said they would go on their own from there. The bridge leads beyond the ridge. No one returns from there. Seo Gyeongho looked at the bridge. He looked at the 5 girls behind him, and he took his first step. The bridge ended after 40 steps. The stone beneath their feet gave way to frozen earth. The wind hit them in the face so hard that Im-Dare staggered and grabbed So Ha-in's shoulder. The wild lands began without warning. No walls, no gates, just the bridge and the cliff. And beyond the cliff, an endless gray plain crisscrossed by ravines. A sparse forest on the horizon. The sky was the color of old iron, and a silence so profound it made their ears ring. Seo Gyeongho stopped at the edge of the cliff and looked back. The convoy was already gone. The bridge behind them looked like a thin thread spanning the abyss. There was nowhere to turn back. He turned to the princesses. 5 faces. 5 different expressions of fear. Yuna was clenching her fists. Solmi was counting something in her head. Young-hee scanned the horizon with narrowed eyes. Ha-in stood upright, waiting for instructions. Dare had already crouched down and was probing the soil with her fingers. The old man nodded to himself. There was material, raw, unprocessed, but it was there. He told them they would set up camp before dark. He said they could cry, but only after they had a fire and shelter. Yuna snapped up. She said she wasn't crying. The old man didn't argue. He simply pointed toward a group of boulders 300 paces away. The wind was weaker there. That's where they'd start. They walked in silence. Along the way, Dare plucked a bunch of dry grass and sniffed it. She said the soil was acidic but not dead. That if they found water nearby, they might be able to grow something. With Gyeongho, he remembered again. A talent for the land. Confirmed. The camp was pitiful. 4 boulders. The old man's cloak stretched out like a canopy. A campfire made of dry branches that Ha-in had spent 20 minutes trying to light with her trembling hands. But it was burning. And when the fire crackled, something changed in the girls' faces. Not hope. More like anger. Anger is better. You can work with that. That night, the old man didn't sleep. He sat by the fire and looked at the seals on the students' wrists. He saw their true numbers. The scale's reading was working. Yuna, bronze 12 on the surface, but the potential within glowed like a red-hot filament. Her key channels were pure, perfectly pure. She could receive the infusion without any loss. That meant the first transmission would go through her. Somi, bronze 15. Her potential lay not in combat ki, but in her analytical structure. Her seal processed information 3 times faster than normal. The perfect economic brain. Yeon-hee, bronze 14. A strange seal. Some of the channels led not to the muscles, but to the sensory organs. She literally saw and heard better than others. Intelligence. Ha-in, bronze 16. Key's vocal channels were naturally amplified. When she spoke with conviction, her seal resonated with the seals of her listeners. A natural-born diplomat at the blood level. Dare, bronze -11. The lowest number. But the channels ran through her palms and fingers. She could sense the earth, stone, water beneath the stone, plants from a distance, an engineer and an agronomist woven into her seal. So Gyeongho closed his eyes. A structure was already taking shape in his mind. Not an army, not a detachment. A state apparatus. 5 ministries, ministries in 5 bodies. War, finance, intelligence, diplomacy, infrastructure. Each of them would become a queen. But first, each had to survive tomorrow. Morning came with a howl. Not the wind. An animal howl from somewhere to the north. Yuna jumped up first. Her hand reached for her belt.
The sword was gone. They'd taken it back in the capital. Yeon-hee pressed her ear to the ground. She said the same thing, "They're coming." Lots of feet, heavy ones. Not beasts, people. Seo Gyeongho stood up. His mentor's seal was pulsing. He'd seen them even before they emerged from behind the ridge. 6, no, 8. 8 figures in animal skins, armed with stone axes and short spears. Savages of the northern ridge. Silver. All silver. The weakest was silver 1,100. The strongest. Seo Gyeongho narrowed his eyes. The chieftain. Huge. Scars on his face arranged in a ritual pattern. Silver 1,800. Against 5 bronze princesses and 1 nominal bronze one, it was a death sentence. The chieftain stopped 20 paces away. He looked at the women. He grinned. He said something in the northern dialect. Seo Gyeongho understood. 30 years in the imperial chancellery, he'd read reports from the north. He'd studied the languages of the border tribes to draft treaties. The chieftain said the women would go with him, and the supplies, and everything they had. The old man could crawl back to the bridge, or die here. Seo Gyeongho didn't answer the chieftain. He turned to Yuna.
The girl stood barefoot on the frozen ground, unarmed. Bronze 12. Against silver 1,800. He said one word to her. Get ready. Yuna didn't understand, but she didn't back down. The old man placed his palm on the back of her head. The mentor's seal activated. Transmission. So Gyeongho opened a channel and began to pour it in. Not ki. Knowledge. A structured combat system. 3rd-level imperial blade technique. Footwork. Breathing cycle. Strike points against a silver opponent. All of this poured into Yuna's seal in a single stream. Her body jerked. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. The seal on her wrist flared so brightly that the chieftain took a step back. The numbers crept upward. 12, 50, 120, 300, 500, 920. So Gyeongho continued to channel. His body paid the price. Somewhere inside, something snapped. Something delicate, like a thread. A year of life burned away in a second. 920, 1,200, 1,500, 1,800, 2,100. Yuna stopped trembling. Her posture changed. Her shoulders squared. Her center of gravity shifted downward. Her feet settled into a stance she'd never been taught, but now knew as well as her own breath. 2,100. 2,400. So Gyeongho withdrew his hand. Enough. She couldn't take any more. Her body wouldn't withstand another workout today. Yuna stood there, staring at her hands. A number glowed on her wrist that she couldn't read because she couldn't believe her eyes. Bronze, 2,400. No, not anymore. Silver, 2,400. The threshold had been crossed.
She'd stepped from bronze to silver in a single minute. Somewhere far away, 1,000 or so, in the temple of the middle tower. The priest of the registry, Yoon Song-ho, was updating the morning readings. His brush froze above the pillar, a line that was supposed to be erased, a name not found in the chronicles. Che Yoon, silver 2400. The priest blinked. He rubbed his eyes. He looked again. The number hadn't disappeared. He dropped the brush. The chieftain of the savages knew nothing of the registry's pillars. He knew nothing of the numbers. He knew only one thing. A second ago, a trembling girl had stood before him. Now, a predator stood before him. The chieftain roared and lunged forward. The axe traced an arc aimed at Yuna's head. She didn't draw her sword. She didn't have a sword. She picked up a palm-sized shard of stone from the ground. A step to the side. The axe whizzed past.
Yuna struck the chieftain in the temple with the stone. One blow. Silver 1,800 versus silver 2,400. A difference of 600 units. The chieftain's head burst open. His body collapsed onto the frozen ground. The 7 savages froze. Yuna turned to face them. The stone in her hand was red. Her face was calm. That calmness frightened them more than the chieftain's death. They ran, all 7 of them, without looking back. The 4 princesses stood by the boulders, holding their breath. Solmi pressed her palm to her mouth. Ha-in took a step back. Dari sat down on the ground because her legs wouldn't hold her. Only Yeon-hee wasn't looking at the corpse. She was looking at the old man, at his hand, which was trembling slightly, at the beads of sweat on his forehead. She saw something. She didn't understand what it was yet, but she remembered it. Seo Gyeongho approached Yuna. He took the stone from her hand. He wiped her palm with his sleeve. He said quietly, "That was just a warm-up." Now, lesson 2. Yuna looked at him. For the first time in 4 days, there was no fear in her eyes. There was something else, something hot and sharp. The old man pulled a rag from his bosom. He unfolded it. Inside lay a flat cake, the last one. He broke it into 5 pieces and handed them out to the princesses. He didn't take any for himself. He sat down on a rock. He looked south, toward the capital, which lay beyond the ridge. Toward the place where Park Sun-min was surely drinking wine right now and telling someone how he'd spat at his former teacher's feet. The old man clenched his fist. Cold tea. He remembers. The chieftain's corpse lay on the frozen ground until noon. Seo Gyeongho wouldn't let anyone touch it. He said to let it lie there. Let the next ones who come see it. Fear works better than walls. Yuna sat off to the side and stared at her hands. She opened and closed her fingers. Her muscles obeyed differently. Every movement was more precise than yesterday. Her body knew things her mind hadn't yet grasped. She asked the old man what he had done to her. Seo Gyeongho replied that he had loaded knowledge into her seal. Not power. Knowledge. Sword technique. Body movement. Reading distance. The strength was her own. She simply didn't know how to use it. Yuna was silent for a moment. Then she asked if he could do the same for the others. The old man said he could. But not today. Each transfer took a toll on him. He didn't explain exactly what. Yuna looked at his trembling hand and didn't ask any further questions. So Gyeongho gathered all 5 of them. He sat down on a rock. They stood before him. For the first time, not as exiles, as students before a teacher. He said he would explain it once. They were in the wildlands, a territory beyond the registry. Here, there were no imperial laws, no taxes, no courts. There were tribes of savages ranging from silver -800 to silver -2000. There are beasts, there is cold. And there is one thing found nowhere else on the continent: freedom. The seal of the celestial registry works everywhere, even here. If the princess builds up her key and controls the territory, the weight of the throne grows. And these numbers appear on the pillars, in every capital, in every temple. The entire continent sees them. Solmi raised her hand. She asked how the numbers could appear on the pillars if their names had been erased. For the first time in days, Seo Gyeongho smiled. He said that the names had been erased from the chronicles, But the seals hadn't been destroyed. They'd been reset to 0.
Those are different things.
The chronicles are written by people. The seals are inscribed by the registry. And the registry doesn't answer to the emperor. It predates the empire. When a seal's weight rises above 100 again, the name will return to the pillar on its own, automatically. And only someone who is physically standing next to the bearer and has a higher rank will be able to erase it again. Solmi closed her eyes. She counted. She opened them a minute later and said, "If each of the 5 reaches a weight of 100, then 5 names will appear on the pillars simultaneously. The court will see that the exiles are alive. It will be a political earthquake." Seo Gyeongho nodded. A talent for numbers. Confirmed. He assigned the tasks. Yuna, hunting and defending the perimeter. Silver 2,400 is the strongest fighter for the next 100 li. No savage squad will dare to approach while she's on patrol. Solmi, inventory. Count everything they have, every rag, every stone, every root. Compile a list of resources within a day's journey. Yeonhee, reconnaissance. Scout the area. Memorize the trails. Find water sources. Determine where the nearest tribes are located. Quietly. Discreetly. Do not make contact. Hyan, communications. If she encounters people who aren't from the tribes, merchants, travelers, refugees, talk to them. Ask questions. Listen. Dare. Land. Find a place to plant crops. Determine the soil composition. Understand what will grow here and when. 5 tasks. 5 directions. 5 future kingdoms were born at that moment on the empty, frozen land, and none of the 5 realized it yet. The first week was hell. Yuna killed 3 wolves and 1 bear. Silver 2,400 against bronze 600 beasts. She didn't break a sweat. They smoked the meat over a campfire. They dried the hides on rocks. Solmi found an abandoned mine about 10 li to the west. Someone had been mining ore here and abandoned it. Tools remained, rusty but still usable. 2 pickaxes, a shovel, and a coil of rope. She brought everything back to camp and sorted it into categories. Gyeongho watched as she arranged the tools, not in a heap, systematically, by function, by condition, by priority of use. He called her over that evening and asked her one question. He asked how much a single ingot of northern iron cost on the capital's market. Solmi answered without hesitation. 14 silver liang per ingot in peacetime. 22 during wartime supply runs. 30 if smuggled past Chancellor Huan's customs. So Gyeongho nodded. She knew the prices. Not approximately, exactly. Taking corruption into account. He placed his palm on the back of her head. Solmi flinched. The mentor's seal had been activated. But he hadn't imbued it with combat technology. He had imbued it with an economic model. The structure of the imperial budget, which he himself had been compiling for 20 years. Tax flows, trade routes, supply bottlenecks. The court's dependence on northern resources that everyone considered useless. Solmi fell to her knees. Her eyes darted beneath her closed eyelids. She saw, not numbers, architecture. The entire financial system of Hwagyong as a 3-dimensional map, where every flow was a river and every bottleneck was a dam that could be blown up. The seal on her wrist flashed. 15, 80, 200, 450, 700. 1,000. Silver 1,000. Not a fighter, an analyst. Her key was concentrated not in her muscles but in her mind. She opened her eyes, and the first thing she said was, Chancellor Huan controls only 3 of the 7 trade routes to the north. The remaining 4 are considered unprofitable. But if we set up a transshipment point at the Western Gorge and establish a caravan route through the Black Fang Pass, then the cost of shipping northern iron will drop by half. His monopoly will collapse in 8 months. Seo Gyeongho clenched his fist. Something inside him snapped again. 1 more year. There was less time left. But the Queen of Gold had been born. On the registry pillar in the capital, next to the impossible figure of silver 2,400, opposite the name Choyun, another line had appeared. Han Solmi, silver, 1,000. This time, Priest Yoon Seong-ho did not drop his brush. He sat before the pillar, motionless. 2 erased names had returned in a single week. Nothing like this had ever happened in the entire history of the registry. He looked at the lines. He looked at the date. He looked at the location column. The wildlands. The north. His hands went cold. Someone in the palace had seen it too. The next morning, a messenger brought a report to Park Sun-min. The general was sitting in his residence on the border with the northern range. He was drinking wine. He was reading reports on caravans. He unrolled the scroll. He read it. His expression did not change. He calmly rolled up the scroll and placed it on the table. Then he slammed his fist down on the tabletop so hard that the wood cracked. Silver 2,400. An exiled girl. A bronze-ranked soldier who had been dead a week ago. Silver 2,400. That's higher than his best lieutenant. Park Sun-min stood up. He summoned the captain. He ordered a punitive squad to be assembled. 20 fighters. Silver class. The mission: cross the ridge. Find the exiles. Kill them all. In the report, write, died of fever. The captain asked about the old man. Park Sun-min paused. Then he said the old man wasn't dangerous. Bronze 1. He could be killed with a flick of the wrist. But if they found him alive, they were to bring him to him personally. He had something to say to his former teacher. Seo Gyeongho didn't know this. He was sitting by the campfire. He watched Yoon, who was practicing her strikes. He watched Solmi, who was drawing diagrams of trade routes on the ground with a stick. He watched Young-hee, who had returned from reconnaissance and was drawing a map of the area from memory. He watched Ha-in, who had found 2 reclusive fishermen by the river and was already negotiating with them to exchange fish for hides. He watched Dare, who was kneeling by the stream, kneading a lump of clay between her fingers with an expression of absolute happiness on her face. 5 seeds. Planted. Sprouting. Now it's a matter of time. Time he has less and less of. Yeon-hee returned from her reconnaissance at dawn and woke the old man with a single word. They're coming. Seo Gyeongho opened his eyes. He didn't ask who. He didn't ask how many. He asked when they would be here. Yeon-hee said she had seen their camp beyond the western ridge. 20 fighters, imperial uniforms, all in silver. They're moving at a leisurely pace. By evening, they'll be at the boulders. The old man sat up. He rubbed his face with his palms. He looked at the sleeping princesses. Yuna, silver 2,400. Solmi, silver 1,000. Not a fighter. Yeon-hee, bronze 14. Ha-in, bronze 16. Dare, bronze 11. Only one is combat ready. 20 against 1. Even with a rank difference, numbers are what matter. If 3 silver 1,500s attack at once, Yuna won't be able to handle it. So Gyeongho closed his eyes. Another mind was at work inside his head, not that of a minister, but of a strategist, a corporate raider who analyzed situations and worse. Resources, territory, time. Resources. 1 silver 2,400 fighter. 4 non-combatant seals. 1 hidden mentor. A mine with tools. Hides, rope, rocks. Knowledge of the terrain that Yeon-hee had been gathering for a week. Territory. Boulders. A ravine to the east. A narrow passage between the rocks to the north. A stream. A forest about 1.5 miles away. Time. 10 hours. He opened his eyes. He woke everyone up. He said that by evening, people who wanted to kill them would arrive. 20 imperial soldiers sent by Park Sun-min. Yuna clenched her fists. Dare turned pale. Ha-in stood up and straightened her back. Solmi asked what their budget was. The old man didn't understand. Solmi corrected herself. She asked what resources they had for defense. Seo Gyeongho listed them. Solmi did the math in her head. She said that if they stretched the enemy out in a line and took them on one by one, Yuna could handle 15. But not 20 at once. They needed to split up the unit. So Gyeongho nodded. Exactly. He began giving orders. Dare, the stream to the south. There's a clay bank there. We need to soften the ground on both sides of the trail for 30 paces. Turn it into a quagmire, not too deep, ankle deep, enough to slow them down. Dare nodded. Her hands already knew what to do. Bronze 11, but her talent for earth meant she could feel every layer of soil. She walked away. Yeon-hee. The northern passage between the rocks. It's narrow there. 2 people in a row. Pile rocks over the passage. Don't let them collapse. Prepare to bring them down at the right moment. 1 rope, 1 pull. Yeon-hee silently took the rope and left. Ha-in. Seo Gyeongho looked at her for a long time. Then he said she had the most difficult task. She had to make her way out to the Imperial detachment, alone, unarmed, and speak. Speak in such a way that they split up. Ha-in turned pale. She asked what exactly she should say. Seo Gyeongho said, the truth. That the princesses were ready to surrender, but not all of them together. 2 had gone north. 3 remained by the boulders. If the captain wanted to report a success to Park Sung-min, he would have to split the detachment. 10 to the north after the fugitives, 10 to the boulders for the rest. Ha-in understood. 10. Not 20. Yuna could handle 10. But there was a problem. She was bronze 16. The soldiers would sense that she was weak. They wouldn't believe she was an envoy. They'd think it was a trap. Seo Gyeongho was silent for a second. Then he placed his hand on her shoulder. Ha-in flinched. The seal flared. He hadn't imbued it with combat skills, nor with economics. It was the diplomatic protocol of the imperial court. 3 decades of negotiations. How to read an interlocutor. How to change the timbre of one's voice so that the seal resonates with another's. How to speak so that the listener believes not in words, but in a feeling. Bronze 16. 50. 150. 400. 700. Silver 700. Not a fighter. But when she opened her mouth, her voice would vibrate at a frequency that would compel Silver 1500 to listen without interrupting. Another year had gone up in smoke. Seo Gyeongho felt his heart skip a beat. 3 transmissions in 10 days. He looked at his hand. His fingers were trembling slightly and continuously. How much was left? He didn't know for sure, but less than there had been. Significantly less. Solmi. Seo Gyeongho turned to her. He told her to stay by the boulders. She would keep count. When the battle began, she had to keep track of the numbers. Who was wounded, who was retreating, who was dangerous, and shout to Yuna. Yuna would listen. Solmi nodded. Her Silver 1000 was analytical. She saw the battle as an equation. Seo Gyeongho turned to Yuna last. He told her one thing. He said that when 10 soldiers entered the passage between the boulders, she must not kill them all. She had to leave one alive. Yuna asked why. Seo Gyeongho replied that he needed a mouth. One that would tell Park Sung-min what had happened. Not a report. Not a scroll. A living person with real fear in their eyes. Yuna nodded. The day was spent working. Dare softened the trail so that on the surface it looked dry, but beneath the thin crust lay sticky clay. Yeon-hee laid stones over the northern passage and concealed the rope. Ha-in practiced speaking, over and over, until her voice became steady, until her breathing synchronized with the pulsation of the seal. Yuna simply sat and whittled a stone. Evening. Dust on the horizon. 20 figures in imperial leather armor. Silver. All silver. The strongest Silver 1700. The captain. Seo Gyeongho saw their numbers from a distance of 300 paces. The scales reading hadn't failed. Not a single gold. Park Sung-min had sent meat, not brains. Good. Ha-in came out to meet them when they were 200 paces from the camp. Alone. Hands raised. Her voice steady. She said the princesses wanted to surrender. That resistance was pointless. But 2 had fled north when they saw the detachment. They escaped through a rocky pass. If the captain wanted all 5, they'd have to split up. The captain looked at her. Silver 700. Weak. But there was something in her voice, something that made him listen. He sensed no trickery. The printed resonance was working. He split the squad. 10 to the north, 10 toward the boulders. The 10 who headed north moved quickly, confidently. They entered a narrow passage between the cliffs. Yeon-hee yanked the rope. Tons of rock came crashing down from above. 5 died instantly. 3 were wounded. 2 managed to escape. Yeon-hee vanished into the rocks before they even realized where the rocks had come from. Bronze 14, but as fast as a shadow. The 10 who headed toward the boulders entered the path that Dare had prepared. The first 3 sank up to their ankles. They lost their pace. The formation stretched out. Yuna emerged from behind a rock. Silver 1,400 against 10 silver units ranging from 1,100 to 1,500. Stretched out. Slowed down. One by one. The first one died without realizing what had happened. The stone pierced his leather breastplate and shattered his sternum. The second one managed to raise his sword. Yuna grabbed his arm, twisted it, broke it, took the sword. Now she had a blade. The third, the fourth, the fifth. Solmi was screaming from behind the boulders. 2 on the left. The one on the right is wounded. Strike the one on the right. Yuna listened. 6th, 7th. The captain finally reached her. Silver 1700, the strongest in the squad. His sword was heavy, imperial forging. The blow came crashing down from above. Yuna parried it with her blade. She parried it. She stepped closer. An elbow to the jaw. The captain staggered back. Yuna struck with her sword from bottom to top. She sliced him from his waist to his collarbone. The captain collapsed. Silver 2,400 versus silver 1,700. A difference of 700 points. The outcome was predictable. 2 remained.
1 dropped his weapon and ran. Yuna didn't chase after him. The second stood knee-deep in the swamp. He was trembling. His sword had fallen. Yuna approached him. She lifted his chin with the tip of her sword. She looked him in the eyes. She turned and walked away. A living mouthpiece, just as the teacher had ordered. In the rocks of the northern pass, the 2 survivors crawled out from under the rubble and ran toward the ridge. Not south. Park Sun-min was in the south. In the south, they'd have to explain themselves. They ran east, into nowhere. The result? 20 soldiers, 13 dead, 5 wounded and crawled away. 1 left behind as a witness. 1 escaped. The princess's losses, 0. Seo Gyeongho sat by the fire and waited. Yuna came with a stranger's sword in her hand. A fine sword, imperial steel. She placed it before the old man. He picked up the blade, examined it, returned it to her, told her it was now her sword. Yuna gripped the hilt. Her fingers fit perfectly. The old man looked into the fire. 14 days in the wildlands, 1 savage chieftain and 20 imperial soldiers. And this is only the beginning. Park Sung-min will find out. He'll come back. With greater numbers. We need to build faster. We need to invest in the others. We need to make it in time. He looked at his hand. The tremor wouldn't stop. Cold tea. He had to survive. The witness reached Park Sun-min's outpost 4 days later. He'd been crawling for the last 2 days or so. When they dragged him into the general's tent, he couldn't speak. He was just shaking. They gave him water. He spit it out. They gave him wine. He drank it and finally spoke. He said everyone was dead. He said that the girl with the sword moved as if she knew where each of them would strike before they themselves had even decided. He said that the old man sat by the fire and drank tea while she killed them. He didn't stand up. He didn't move a muscle. He just drank tea. Park Sun-min listened in silence. His face was like stone. When the witness finished, the general asked one question. He asked if the witness had seen the old man's seal. The witness said he had. Bronze one. Dull. Almost lifeless. Park Sung-min nodded. So it wasn't the old man. It was the girl. She'd drawn her power from somewhere. Someone had helped her. Maybe the northern shamans. Maybe she'd found an artifact in the wildlands. His mind refused to accept the only correct explanation, because that explanation would mean that Bronze 1 was more dangerous than Gold 7,200. And that couldn't be. He dismissed the witness. He sat down alone.
He unfolded a map of the northern lands. He stared at it for a long time. Then he folded it up and wrote 2 letters. The first was to the capital, addressed to Chancellor Hwan Yeon-chul, Platinum 15,000, the Grey Cardinal at the throne's side, the man who controlled the trade routes to the north. Park Sun-min wrote that the exiled princesses had organized an armed cult in the wildlands, that they were recruiting savages, that they posed a threat to imperial caravans. He requested authorization for an expanded punitive operation. The second letter was shorter. It was addressed to the commander of the Black Chain Mercenary Unit, Silver Class, 50 fighters, specialization, hunting down fugitive aristocrats. Park Sun-min hired them out of his own pocket. He didn't want to wait for a response from the chancellor. He wanted to finish quickly, quietly, before the numbers on the registry pillars attracted too much attention.
He was too late.
In the capital, Hwagyong, day began with the reading of the registry. The courtiers gathered around the marble pillar in the Hall of Chronicles, just as they did every month. Priest Yoon Song-ho unrolled the scroll containing the new data. His hands didn't tremble. Not anymore. In 2 weeks, he had grown accustomed to the impossible. But today, 3 new entries. Baek Yeon-hee, bronze 340. So Ha-in, silver 700. Im Da-rae, bronze 290. The hall buzzed. 5 names. 5 names that had been erased were back on the pillar. All 5 exiled princesses were alive. 1 silver 2,400. 1 silver 1,000. 1 silver 700. 2 bronzes, but a rising bronze. A bronze that in a month will be silver. The courtiers exchanged glances. They whispered. Each princess's throne weight was still negligible, a mere fraction. But the fact remained. Erased names do not return. That is the rule. Unshakable. In effect for 1,000 years. Erased names do not return. Yet these had returned. Between the lines on the pillar, priest Yoon Seong-ho noticed something else. The location coordinate. All 5 seals were recorded at a single point. 1 camp. They were together. They hadn't scattered.
They hadn't died one by one.
Together. That was more frightening than the numbers. In the eastern wing of the palace, in chambers draped in dark silk, Grand Duchess Mo Soryeon was drinking her morning tea and listening to her maid's report. The maid was reading data from the register, monotonously, as usual. She stumbled over the names of the exiles. She reread them. Mo Soryeon set down her cup. She was 68 years old. She had seen 3 emperors. She had survived 2 palace coups. She ruled the Eastern House, one of the empire's 9 great houses. She knew what chaos looked like, and she knew what a plan looked like. 5 princesses from 5 different houses, of different ages, with different talents, gathered in one place, growing at the same time, but at different speeds and in different directions. One is a fighter, one is an analyst, one is a diplomat. This isn't survival, this is structure. Mo Soryeon closed her eyes. The face of the old advisor floated into her memory. Seo Gyeongho, the man who had built the empire in the same way for 30 years, functionally. Everyone in their place, every talent utilized, every cog in the machine. But Seo Gyeongho is dead.
Erased. Erased.
She opened her eyes. She looked at the maid. She said one sentence. It's not the girls, it's him. The maid didn't understand. Mo Soryeon didn't bother to explain. She ordered her personal messenger to be summoned, the fastest one, the quietest one. She had a letter that needed to be delivered to the north, personally, into the hands of an old man who was no longer there. In the north. In the wildlands. So Kyung-ho knew nothing of this. He did what he did every day. He built. After the battle with the punitive squad, he had 10 days of peace. He made use of every hour. Yeon-hee received her transmission on the 5th day after the battle. The old man hadn't put a battle or an economic analysis into it. An intelligence matrix, 30 years of working with imperial spies.
how to read tracks, how to determine the size of a detachment by the width of a trampled trail, how to hear a lie in a voice, how to move so that even silver 1,500 wouldn't notice you 10 steps away. Yan He, bronze 14, 60, 150, 340. Not very high, but her transmission was different. The key didn't go into her muscles or her head, into her eyes, into her ears, into her skin. She became a sensor.
She could sense a living creature approaching from 300 steps away. She could hear a heartbeat through a wall. She could see in the dark. Bronze 340 by the numbers. By function. The best scout on the continent. 1 year of life. The 4th. The tremor in her left hand had become constant. With Gyeongho, she hid it in her sleeve. Dare. The last of the 5. The quietest. The most inconspicuous. Her transmission took place on the 8th day. The old man instilled in her agronomy and engineering, irrigation, crop rotation, principles of fortification, how to build walls that will stand for a century, how to turn frozen earth into a field that feeds 1,000 people. Dare. Bronze 11. 40. 100. 190. 290. The lowest number out of the 5. But when she placed her hands on the ground after the transfer, the soil around her trembled. Within a radius of 10 steps, the frozen ground softened. Dry roots sprouted. A stream that hadn't been there before burst forth from a crack in the rock. Her key worked through the earth. Not bronze 290. Bronze 290 was on the pillar, but in the earth, in the stone, in the water. She was the foundation. The 5th year of her life had been consumed. Gyeongho lay on the ground after the transmission and couldn't get up for 2 hours. Yuna brought him water. He drank. His hand was shaking so much that half of it spilled. Yuna looked at him. She wanted to ask. She didn't ask. She already suspected. They all suspected. But no one said it out loud. By the end of the 1st month in the wildlands, the camp by the boulders had changed. Dare had built a wall of compacted earth 2 human heights high. Not stone, not wood. Earth compressed by her key to the density of granite. Inside the wall, 3 shelters, a hearth, and a storage area for meat and roots. Solmi found an iron vein in an abandoned mine. She calculated the yield. 200 ingots in the 1st month if 6 people worked on it. So Gyeongho explained that 6 people weren't necessary. He went out beyond the wall alone. He made his way to the nearest savage encampment, the Wolfbone tribe. Their chieftain had been killed by Yuna. The warriors were left without a leader. Silver 800 to silver 1,200, 30 men. An old man approached them, bronze 1, alone, unarmed. They could have killed him with a snap of their fingers. He said in their language that their chief's head had burst from a blow with a stone. That the girl who did it was now silver 2400 and was standing about 1.5 miles from here. That she might come here, or she might not. It depended on what they chose. Death or work. The mine, iron, food and protection in exchange for ore. The savages exchanged glances. The eldest among them, silver 1200, looked at the old man for a long time. Then he asked who he was. Seo Gyeongho replied that he was a teacher, just a teacher. The savage didn't understand, but he agreed. 30 pairs of hands. The mine began operating. The first ingots of northern iron were stored in the vault a week later. Solmi did the math. At the current rate of production, in 3 months they would have enough iron to arm 50 fighters, and enough surplus to start trading. She looked at the old man and said one sentence. She said that Chancellor Huan would be furious when he found out. Seo Gyeongho nodded. Exactly. The enemy's fury is also a resource, if you know how to channel it. That night, the old man sat alone behind the wall, looking south. Somewhere out there, Park Sung-min was writing letters. Somewhere out there, the Chancellor was counting his profits. Somewhere out there, the Emperor was drinking jasmine tea. So Gyeongho clenched his left hand into a fist. The tremor hadn't stopped. His fingers wouldn't obey him. 5 transmissions, 5 years of life, 72 minus 5. Maybe less. His body was old. Each year weighs more than it does for a young man. But 5 seeds have been planted. All 5. Now to water them and wait. And not to die before they grow. He looked up at the stars. The sky over the wild lands was clear. No smoke, no lights, only stars and silence. Somewhere in the southwest, a red dot flashed across the sky. Quickly. Not a star, not a meteor, something else. Seo Gyeongho followed it with his eyes. The dot disappeared over the horizon. The mark on his wrist twitched. Once. Briefly, like a warning. He didn't know what it was. But the mentor's body knew. Somewhere within the wall of the world something stirred. It scratched. And then it fell silent. For now. Park Sung-min doesn't believe the old man is dangerous and hires the Black Chain Mercenary Squad, 50 fighters, for a new attack. In the capital, all 5 names reappear on the registry pillars, causing shock at court. Grand Duchess Mo Soryeon recognizes Seo Gyeongho's handwriting within the Northern 5 structure and sends a secret messenger to the north. Seo Gyeongho completes the transmissions to all 5 disciples. Yeon-hee to Bronze 340 as a scout. Da-rae to Bronze 290 as an agricultural engineer, having spent 5 years of his life on the task. The first fortress is built. A tribe of savages is subjugated. An iron mine is put into operation. The old man's seal reacts to something beyond the world. The Black Chain Squad set out for the Northern Ridge 12 days after being hired. 50 fighters, ranked from Silver 1,300 to Silver 1,900. Commander No Tae-gil, Silver 1,900. A mercenary with 20 years of experience. He killed for money. He killed for the thrill. He killed because he knew how, and because the world is set up so that those who know how to kill are always needed. Park Sun-min paid him triple the going rate. He said the targets were weak, 5 women and an old man. But be careful. The first squad didn't return. But No Tae-gil wasn't. 20 village swordsmen were no match for the Black Chain. The Black Chain operated as a unit. A wedge. Shields. Spears. They overwhelmed with sheer numbers and discipline. Individual strength doesn't matter when a wall of iron is bearing down on you. They crossed the ridge at night. They moved silently. Professionally. They didn't light any torches. They navigated by the stars and the scent of the wind. By dawn, they were 15 li from the fortress. Yeon-hee sensed them 12 li away. She was sitting atop a sentry boulder, eyes closed, ki in her ears and skin. The earth's vibration. 50 pairs of feet. Heavy, rhythmic, in formation. Not savages, not beasts, soldiers. She climbed down and ran toward the fortress. She woke the old man with 3 words. 50. Formation. Silver. So Gyeongho sat down. He rubbed his face. 50. This is no longer a punitive raid. This is war. Yuna can't handle this alone. Silver 2,400 against 50. Silver is a meat grinder where numbers will prevail. We need to think differently. He summoned Solmi. He asked how many fighters they had. Solmi replied, Yuna, 30 savages from the Wolfbone tribe, ranging from Silver 800 to Silver 1,200, armed with stone axes. Half of them have iron ingots that dare reforged into crude over the past week. Total combat strength. Yuna equals 5 average silver-ranked fighters. 30 savages equal roughly 30 average silver-ranked fighters. That's a total of 35 conventional units. Against 50 disciplined mercenaries, that's a losing battle. So Gyeongho nodded. Numbers against numbers, they'll lose. So I need to set the rules. He called all 5 of them over. He spread out on the ground the map that Yeon-hee had been drawing for 3 weeks. Every ravine, every hill, every stream. So Gyeongho pointed to a spot about 4 li south of the fortress. A low-lying area. Spring meltwater pooled here and flowed eastward through a narrow channel. If we block the channel, Dare raised her head. Her eyes lit up. She understood before the old man had finished. If we block the channel and let the water build up over 2 days, and then open it all at once, the lowland would become a trap, mud up to the knees. The formation would break down. Spears would be useless. Shields would be heavy. In the mud, discipline would become a burden. Seo Gyeongho nodded. Dare ran toward the channel without waiting for an order. Her ki worked through the earth, bronze 290 according to the ratings, but the earth obeyed her like a docile beast. In 6 hours, she had built an earthen dam. Water began to pool. Quietly, imperceptibly. From the outside, the lowland looked ordinary. Dry grass, hard soil. Beneath the crust, a lake of mud waiting for a single touch. Yeon-hee received her second task, to lead the squad into the lowland. Not by fighting, by leaving tracks. She spent 2 hours laying a false trail. The footprints of 5 pairs of women's feet. A campfire, scraps of cloth. Everything led to the lowland. A professional tracker would have seen the trick. But no Tae-gil wasn't a tracker. He was a butcher. He followed the tracks like a bull chasing a red rag. Ha-in was given her third task, the riskiest one. So Gyeongho told her to go out to meet the mercenaries before they entered the valley. Not as a negotiator, as a decoy. Disheveled, terrified, screaming that the others had abandoned her and fled south through the valley, that she was surrendering, that she was begging for mercy. Ha-yeon listened in silence. Then she asked what would happen if the commander didn't believe her and killed her on the spot. Seo Gyeongho paused. Then he said that silver 700s with diplomatic resonance aren't killed on the spot. They're listened to. Always. Even by those who don't want to. Hae-in nodded. She didn't smile. She just nodded and went to get ready. Yuna stood nearby and said nothing. Then she told the old man that if anything happened to Hae-in, she'd kill all 50 of them. So Gyeongho looked at her. He said that was exactly why Hae-yeon was going first. Because after her, there would be no need to kill 50. Dawn of the second day. The Black Chain squad reached the lowlands, but Tae-gil halted the formation. He looked ahead. The tracks led downward. Hae-in ran out from behind the rocks on the right. She fell. She crawled toward the mercenaries. Her voice was breaking. She screamed that they had left. Everyone had left. They'd abandoned her because she was weak. They'd run across the lowlands south toward the pass. If they hurried, they could catch up. But Tae-gil looked at her. Silver 700. Weak. The imprint was dim. Her voice. There was something in her voice. He didn't want to believe it. But the imprint resonance vibrated at the frequency of trust. His own silver 1900 resisted. But the 49 fighters behind him were weaker. They believed. He could see it in their faces. Hesitation would cost him his authority. Tae-gil barked a command. Forward. Across the lowland. Form a wedge. Quickly. 50 pairs of feet struck the dry crust at once. The first 10 steps went smoothly. On the 12th, the crust broke. Mud gushed up from below, up to the ankles, up to the knees. The formation broke instantly. Shields got stuck. Spears sank into the mud. Soldiers clung to one another and dragged each other deeper. Dare removed the dam. The water came. Not in a torrent, a slow, heavy wave. The mud turned liquid. Now it was waist deep. But Tae-gil roared. He was standing thigh deep in the mud. His silver 1900 allowed him to hold his ground. He began to pull himself out with sheer strength. Ki surged into his leg muscles. Yuna waited at the edge of the lowland, sword in hand. Imperial steel taken from the dead captain. She didn't jump down. She waited for those who would make it out. The first mercenary climbed onto solid ground, filthy, without a shield, without a spear, with a single knife. Silver 1400. Yuna struck once. He fell back into the mud. The second. The third. She stood at the edge and hacked away like a butcher at a slaughterhouse. Everyone who crawled out received a blade to the neck or chest. It wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. 30 savages of wolf's bone stood on the other side of the hollow with iron blades and stone axes. Those who tried to escape from that side were met by them. A silver 800 savage against a silver 1,500 mercenary, both waist-deep in mud. An even match. The mud leveled the playing field. But Tajil broke free. He yanked himself out of the sludge in one swift pull. Silver 1900. Strong. Angry. With a sword. He stepped onto solid ground. He saw Yuna. He saw her seal. Silver 2,400. His expression changed. Not fear. Calculation. He realized he had lost. Not to her. To the situation. He dropped his sword, raised his hands, said that the black chain was surrendering, that they were mercenaries, not fanatics, that the contract wasn't worth 50 lives. Yuna looked at the old man. Seo Gyeongho stood on the hill 100 paces away. Bronze 1, a cane in his right hand, his left hand hidden in his sleeve. He nodded. Yuna lowered her sword. 23 living mercenaries were pulled out of the mud. 27 remained in the lowlands, dead or dying. But Tajil stood before the old man and waited. Seo Gyeongho asked him one thing. He asked how much Park Sung-min had paid for the contract. Tajil named the sum. 300 gold pieces. Seo Gyeongho nodded. He said he was offering 400 for another job. Tajil narrowed his eyes. He asked what kind. Seo Gyeongho said he didn't need swords. He needed hands. A mine. A construction project. A road from the fortress to Blackfang Pass. The very pass through which, according to Solmi's calculations, a trade route would run, bypassing Chancellor Huan's monopoly. Tajil was silent for a long time. Then he asked where bronze -1 400 gold pieces. Seo Gyeongho replied that he didn't have them yet, but in 3 months he would. Iron. Northern iron. The best on the continent. The first caravan would cross the pass and bring in more than 400. He was offering a share. Not a salary. A share. Tajil had been a mercenary for 20 years. He knew the value of words. And he knew the value of eyes. The old man's eyes didn't lie. The mentor's seal pulsed. The scale's reading showed Seo Gyeongho Tajil's true figures. Silver, 1,900. No hidden layers. An honest fighter. Greedy, pragmatic, but honest. Tajil held out his hand. Seo Gyeongho shook it. 23 mercenaries of the Black Chain became laborers, then guards, then the first garrison of the first fortress in the wildlands. Solmi calculated the new balance. 30 savages, 23 mercenaries, 5 princesses, 1 old man, 60 people. The throne weight of each princess had increased. Yuna, 18. Solmi, 12. Hain, 9. Yeonhee, 7. Dare, 14. Not much, but it's growing. Weight measures territory, people, resources, loyalty. Every new person under a princess's command adds to the weight, every ingot of iron in the vault, every foot of the wall. Seo Gyeongho sat by the campfire that evening. Yuna was cleaning her sword. Solmi was drawing a map of a new trade route on the ground. Yeonhee had gone out into the night, on patrol. Ha-in was talking with Tajil, learning the names of his men, each one's story, weaknesses, affection, information. Dare was asleep. The ground beside her was warm, always warm, even on a northern night. The old man watched them and counted. Not key, not weight, time. 5 transfers. 5 years of a life burned away. Park Sung-min will send someone else. Stronger. Bigger. They needed to grow faster than the enemy escalated. By the time of the princess's next strike, they needed to be closer to gold than to silver. And for that, they needed more transmissions. And each transmission was a year. He looked at his left hand. The tremor was now in his right hand as well. Both were shaking. Cold tea. He had to survive. He had to. A letter from Chancellor Hwan Yeon-chul reached Park Sung-min 3 weeks later. The platinum 15,000 seal glowed so brightly on the wax that the messenger carried it in a lead case. Park Sung-min broke the seal. He read it. He read it a second time. He burned it. The Chancellor did not grant authorization for an expanded punitive operation. The Chancellor offered something else. A contact. A name. The 7 Blades of the Black Lotus. The Assassins Guild. Gold 6,000 each. 7 assassins who hadn't failed a single contract in 10 years. Price. Service. Not money. The Chancellor wanted Park Sun-min to marry his youngest daughter, Hwang Min-ji,
A political alliance.
the Park family would be tied to the Hwang family. General Gold minus 7,200 becomes the son-in-law of Platinum 15,000. Park Sung-min looked at the ashes of the letter. Marriage. The price for 7 assassins. He thought about the Chancellor's daughter. He'd never seen her. It didn't matter. The face didn't matter. What mattered was weight. A marriage to the Hwan family would formally raise his political rank to Platinum 12,000. His title would remain Gold 7,200, but the weight of the throne would skyrocket. And then, even if the old man and his puppets each gathered 5,000, he would crush them with a single decree. Not with a sword, with a piece of paper. He wrote his reply. Agreed. The wedding is in 2 months. Let the Black Lotus blades set out immediately. The messenger left. Park Sun-min was left alone. He sat down. He stared at the wall. He remembered the old man. He remembered 30 years ago. A little boy in a border village, hungry, dirty, bronze 40, a nobody. The old man leaned toward him, held out a flatbread, said the boy had good eyes, said he'd take him with him to the capital. Park Sun-min clenched his teeth. He didn't want to remember.
Didn't want to think about the flatbread, about the hand on his shoulder, about the years when the old man taught him to read and write and hold a brush. Those years were a lie. The old man wasn't helping him. The old man was crafting a tool for himself, an obedient student, a loyal dog. And when the dog became a wolf, the old man tried to pull on the leash, and the wolf chewed through it. It's all right. It's all fair. Park Sun-min stood up. He stepped out onto the porch. He looked north. Somewhere out there beyond the ridge, the old man was sitting by the fire, thinking he could outwit him. No, he won't. Because Park Sun-min is no longer a boy with a flatbread. He is a general. And in 2 months, he will be the son-in-law of the most dangerous man in the empire. It was the 2nd month in the north. The fortress was growing. Dare had erected a 2nd wall. The inner courtyard had expanded. Barracks for savages and mercenaries had appeared. A smithy. Dare herself had built the furnace from fireproof clay she'd found by the stream bed. Tegel had put his men to work forging. Rough blades were being transformed into serviceable swords. Not imperial steel, but better than stone. Solmi started keeping records. Every ingot was accounted for, every sack of grain, every hide. She kept a record of resources with the precision of an imperial treasurer. Because the knowledge of an imperial treasurer, implanted there by the old man, resided in her mind. Yeonhee expanded the network. 3 observation posts within a radius of 20 li. Bronze 340, but she had trained 4 savages in basic reconnaissance. They were duller and slower, but there were 4 of them, and they could take turns. Information flowed around the clock. Hain worked with people. During the 2nd month, she held negotiations with 2 neighboring tribes. The Stone Crow tribe, 40 warriors, silver 700 to silver 1,100. The Blue Fire tribe, 25 warriors, silver 900 to silver 1,300. Neither tribe came out of fear. They came out of interest. Rumors of Yuna and the dead chieftain had spread throughout the wildlands. So had rumors of iron blades and warm walls. Hain offered them the same deal she'd offered Tegel. Not submission, an alliance. Work in exchange for a share. Protection in exchange for loyalty. The seal of the oath sealed every agreement. Not words. Key. An unbreakable bond inscribed in the blood. Seo Gyeongho watched. He did not interfere.
He drank tea made from a wild root that Dare had learned to brew. Bitter. Nothing like jasmine. But hot. Hot tea for the living. Cold tea was reserved for one person. By the middle of the second month, the fortress's population had surpassed 150. The weight of the princess's throne had jumped. Yuna, 48. Solmi, 35. Ha-in, 32. Yeonhee, 27. Dare, 41. Dare had overtaken Yeonhee and Ha-in because weight took infrastructure into account. The walls, the smithy, the warehouses. All of that was her work, and the registry saw it. On the pillar in the capital, the numbers crept upward every week. Priest Yoon Seong-ho was no longer surprised. He kept a separate journal, recording the trends. 5 graphs, 5 growth curves. He showed the journal to the senior priest. The latter turned pale and ordered him not to show it to anyone. It was too late. Half the court was already watching the pillar as if it were a race. They were placing bets. Which of the 5 would grow first? When the total weight would exceed 200, 500, 1,000. It was unheard of. Exiles don't grow, exiles die. But these 5 were growing as if someone were watering them. So Gyeongho knew that the court's attention was a double-edged sword. Their growth was visible to everyone. But their vulnerability was visible to everyone too. If the court realized that the princesses were still weak, that Yuna's silver 2,400 was the ceiling, that the other 4 were still silver and bronze, then the chancellor won't wait. He'll strike now while he still can. So they need to grow faster. He called Yuna in the middle of the night. She came. She sat across from him. She was silent. She waited. Seo Gyeongho placed his hand on the back of her neck. Second transmission. Not her first. The first was the basic one. Third-level blade technique. Now he was imparting the 5th. The highest imperial school of the sword. The one known only to gold-class generals. The one Park Sun-min knew. And the one Seo Gyeongho himself knew, because 30 years ago he had written the textbook used to train the generals. Yuna flinched. She clenched her teeth. Ki surged through her. 2,400, 2,800, 3,100, 3,500. The threshold. The line between silver and gold. 3,500, 3,800, 4,000. Gold, 4,000. Yuna opened her eyes. They were different. Deeper. Colder. She looked at her hands and whispered that she could see everything now. Every strike. Every block. Every stance. She could see the entire fight before it even began. Seo Gyeongho withdrew his hand. The 6th year had burned away. His left hand hung limply. He couldn't feel his fingers. For a second. 2. 5. The sensation returned. But his body warned him. The next transfer might not cost a year. It might cost an arm, or a leg, or his eyes. He hid his hand in his sleeve. Yuna was watching him. She could see. Gold 4,000 sees more than silver 2,400. She saw the tremor, the pallor, the sweat. She saw that the teacher was paying the price. She didn't ask how. She stood up, bowed, said one thing, said she wouldn't let him pay in vain, and left. Gyeongho was left alone. He looked south. There in the capital, Park Sun-min was preparing for a wedding and a treaty with the chancellor. There, 7 gold 6,000 assassins were each sharpening their blades. There, the emperor was drinking tea and not thinking about the old man he'd wiped out 4 months ago. Let him not think. Let him drink. Soon the tea will grow cold. The 7 blades of the Black Lotus did not march in formation. They left no traces. They lit no fires. They moved like shadows along 7 different routes and were to converge at a single point on a single night. Each was gold 6,000. Each specialized in assassinating a specific type of target. First blade, poison. Second, strangulation. Third, throwing knives. Fourth, traps. Fifth, disguise. Sixth, close combat. Seventh, commander, tactician, Role assigner. Gold 6,200. The strongest of the 7. His name was Moon Hyuk. 38 years old. 49 confirmed assassinations of aristocrats. 12 of them had been ranked above gold during their lifetimes. Yeon-hee spotted the first one at dawn on the 3rd month. She didn't see it. She didn't hear it. She sensed it. An absence. The birds fell silent in the southwestern sector. The small animals had fled. Something had startled them. Something invisible. She ran to the old man. Seo Gyeongho was sitting against the wall. His left arm was tucked into his sleeve. In his right hand, he held a cup of bitter tea. He listened. He didn't flinch. He asked how many. Yeon-hee said she didn't know. At least one. Maybe more. They were better than anyone she'd ever faced. Gold. Definitely gold. Seo Gyeongho set down his cup. Gold 6,000. That's a whole different level. The silver mercenaries were cannon fodder. These were scalpels. Yuna was gold 4,000. A difference of 2,000 units. One-on-one she'd lose. 7-1. No need to even count. He closed his eyes. He thought. Scenarios played out in his head. The corporate strategist sorted through options like files in a folder. Opened, reviewed, discarded. Next, discarded. Next. He paused, opened his eyes, called for Solmi, asked her one thing. How many people in the fortress know that the old man performs the transmissions? Solmi answered. 5 princesses. Taegel saw the result but not the process. Savages don't understand. Only 5. So Gyeongho nodded. He said the assassins were after the princesses, not after him. To them, he was bronze 1, a nobody, a servant. They'd kill their 5 targets and leave. That meant the 5 targets had to be somewhere other than where the assassins expected to find them. He began issuing orders. Regroup. At night. Quietly. The princesses leave the fortress. Not together. One at a time. To 5 different locations known only to Yeon-hee. Taegil stays in the fortress with the garrison. They make it look like a normal night. Bonfires burn. Guards patrol. 5 figures in women's clothing sleep in hiding places. Not the princesses. Wild women of roughly the same height. Decoys. Yuna didn't want to leave. She said she would stay and fight. So Gyeongho looked at her. He asked if she could kill 7 gold 6,000s at once. Yuna remained silent. She knew the answer. A gold 4,000 against 7 gold 6,000s meant certain death. She clenched her teeth and nodded. She left. Night. The fortress looked normal. Taegel personally checked to make sure the 5 decoys were in place. The savages were frightened, but Ha-in spoke with each of them before leaving. Her voice vibrated. Resonance. They calmed down. Not completely, but enough to lie down and not run away. Yeon-hee stayed behind. Not in the fortress. Outside. In the rocks. Bronze 340, but invisible in the night. Her task? To watch. To count. To determine which of the 7 was where. Seo Gyeongho stayed behind too. He sat by the bonfire in the center of the fortress. Bronze 1. An old man by the fire. Part of the scenery. The assassins won't touch Bronze 1. He's not a target. He's nothing. They arrived during the 3rd watch. Yeon-hee spotted 4 of them. 3 slipped past. She didn't see them. Gold 6,000 versus bronze 340 in disguise. The difference is too great. But she saw the 4. The first blade slipped through the wall. Poison. A thin needle. He reached the first sleeping figure. He plunged the needle into her neck. The figure twitched, then froze. Not the one. Not the princess. A savage. He realized it a second later. He lifted the blanket. A stranger's face. The second blade was at the second figure. A noose. Same story. Not her. The 3rd. The 4th. The 6th blade reached the 5th figure. Close combat. He didn't hold back. He struck. The blade sliced through the blanket and the body beneath it. The savage woman died instantly. Not her. Moon Hyuk stood on the wall and looked down.
A trap. He was the first to realize it. He raised his hand, a gesture to retreat. The 6 blades began to fall back. So Gyeongho sat by the fire. He didn't move. He didn't look at them. He just sat there drinking tea. Moon-hyuk looked down at the old man from above. Bronze 1. Old. Useless.
But something tugged at the edge of his consciousness. The old man was drinking tea in a fortress full of assassins and wasn't afraid. Or maybe he didn't know. Or maybe he wasn't afraid. Moon-hyuk leaped from the wall, silently. He landed 10 paces from the old man. Seo Gyeongho raised his head. He looked at the assassin. Their eyes met. Reading the scale. Gold 6,200. Commander. Moon-hyuk saw the old man. Bronze 1. A dull seal. Trembling hands. 72 years in a worn-out body. Nothing. Except the eyes. The eyes were not those of an old man. Those eyes were cold and sharp as a blade. Moon-hyuk lingered for a second longer than he should have. That second saved the lives of 6 of the 7 blades, because in the very next second, the fortress walls shook. Dare. She wasn't inside the fortress. She was beneath it, in a tunnel she dug in 3 days when Seo Gyeongho ordered a regrouping. The tunnel ran from the foot of the hill straight under the wall's foundation. Dare struck. Not ki in the traditional sense. She sent a pulse through the ground. The stone trembled. 2 sections of the wall sagged by an elbow's length, not enough to bring it down. Enough for everyone standing on or near the wall to lose their balance for a moment. Yeon-hee had calculated it. She timed it perfectly. 3 of the 7 blades were on or near the walls at the moment of the strike. They stumbled. For half a second. Yuna was 300 paces to the north. She already started. When the ground shook, she ran. Gold 4,000 at full speed is a blurred shadow. She burst into the fortress through the northern gate 4 seconds after Dare's strike. The first blade. Poison. He had just regained his balance. He turned. He saw the glint of steel. It was too late. Yuna's sword pierced his chest. Gold 6,000 versus gold 4,000. A difference of 2,000. But he wasn't ready. She was. The element of surprise is worth 1,000 points. He fell. The first blade of the Black Lotus went out. The second blade heard the sound of a falling body. He spun around. The noose whistled past. Yuna ducked. The noose flew over her head. Yuna struck from below. It sliced through his forearm. The second recoiled. Alive. Wounded. Dangerous. The other 5 were already moving. Toward the exits. Moon-hyuk barked a command in a language Yuna didn't understand. Retreat. Regroup. 6 shadows darted toward the walls. Yuna rushed after the third. The thrower. He spun mid-jump. 3 knives. In a fan formation. Gold 6,000 precision. Yuna parried 2. The third slashed her shoulder. Not deep. But the gold blades had been treated. Not poison. A retardant. The chi in her right shoulder began to stagnate. Her arm grew heavy. The third blade vanished through the wall. Yuna didn't catch up. The remaining 5 vanished into the night. The wounded second blade left with them. The result, 1 killed, 1 wounded, 5 unharmed. They're gone. So Gyeongho stood by the body of the first blade. Yuna approached. Her right arm hung limply. The retarder was working. She said she'd let 6 of them get away. So Gyeongho said that 6 was a victory. 6,000 gold each. 7 against the fortress without a single gold defender present. 1 killed, 1 maimed. Not a single princess was harmed. He said that Moon-hyuk would return, but not today. Today, the assassin is thinking, recalculating, adjusting the plan. That buys time. Yuna asked how much time. So Gyeongho replied, 10 days, maybe 15. Enough to prepare. Enough to carry out what he had planned. He looked at Yuna's wound. The retardant would dissipate in 2 days. Not fatal, but a warning. Gold 6,000 isn't silver.
It's a different league. And Yuna, a gold 4,000, is still a rookie in this league. We need more. We need it faster. We need to pay. Iced tea. The price is rising. 10 days. Seo Gyeongho used every single one. On the morning of the first day, he gathered all 5 of them and said something he'd never said before. He said that his transfers weren't free. Each one takes a year of life from his body. 5 students, 6 transmissions, 6 years burned away. A 72-year-old body functions like a 66-year-old's, maybe worse. Because the years don't burn away evenly. They tear at what's weakest, the heart, the joints, the nerves. His left hand is already failing him. His right will soon follow. He should have said this sooner. He didn't, because students shouldn't be afraid to learn. He's saying it now because the next transmissions will be harder, and he needs them to understand that every second he invests in them is a second he won't live, and that he invests it willingly, not out of pity, out of calculation. 5 queens are worth 1 old man. Silence.
Dare was the first to cry. Quietly, silently. Tears streamed down her cheeks and dripped onto the ground. The ground beneath her feet trembled. It responded to the mistress's grief. Ha-in turned pale. Her hands clenched. She wanted to say something but couldn't. For the first time in 2 months, the diplomat was at a loss for words. Solmi stood motionless. She was counting. That's how Gyeongho could tell from her eyes. She was counting how many years he had left, and she didn't like the answer. Yeon-hee was silent. She looked at the old man's hand, the one he was hiding in his sleeve. She had seen the tremor from the very first day. Now she knew why. Yuna. Yuna took a step forward. She stood before him. She looked him in the eyes, and she said one thing. She said that for every year he had spent on them, she would repay him with the heads of his enemies. 1 year for 1 head. 6 heads. She listed them. Park Sun-min, Chancellor Hwang, Moon Hyuk. There were 3 names she didn't know yet, but she would find out, and she would bring them. So Gyeongho looked at her, at the 16-year-old girl with the eyes of a killer, and nodded. He accepted. Then he said that enough with the tears and promises. Work was waiting. He conducted Solmi's transfer that very day. Her second one. The first was an economic model. The second was combat analytics. Not combat. Tactics. Calculating the battlefield. Identifying weak points in the formation. Predicting the enemy's movements based on subtle body movements. Solmi didn't become a fighter. She became a tactical eye. Silver 1,000. 1,400. 1,800. 2,200. Silver 2,200. She opened her eyes, and the first thing she said was, Moon Hyuk isn't attacking the fortress. He's attacking the water supply. The stream to the south. The only source of fresh water within a 10-li radius. Poison the stream, and the fortress will fall in a week. Seo Gyeongho nodded. He'd come to the same conclusion, but it had taken him an hour. It took her 30 seconds. The 7th year went up in flames. His right hand twitched. He clenched his fist. He unclenched it. His fingers obeyed him. For now, at least. Yeon-hee received her second transmission on the 3rd day. Deep penetration reconnaissance. Methods for operating behind enemy lines. How to build a network of informants. How to bribe. How to blackmail. How to disappear bronze 340. 500. 800. 1,100. Silver 1,100. Not very high, but every unit of her ki was focused on perception. A silver 1,100 sensory type unit is equivalent to a silver 3,000 standard unit in terms of detection radius. She could now sense a gold 6,000 assassin 500 paces away. She didn't see him. She sensed him, like pressure, like a change in air density. The 8th year. His left hand went completely numb for 3 hours. He lay on the ground with Gyeongho, waiting for the sensation to return. Yuna sat beside him, silently. She didn't leave until he stood up. Ha-in. Second transmission on the 5th day. advanced diplomatic tactics, dealing with a hostile audience, persuasion under pressure, counter-manipulation, how to talk to someone who came to kill you and walk away alive. Silver 700. 1100. 1600. 2000. Silver 2000. When she spoke now, her voice penetrated under your skin. Even Yuna Gold 4000 caught herself nodding before she even realized what she was hearing. The 9th year. Seo Gyeongho couldn't get up for 12 hours. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling of the shelter. Dare placed warm stones on his chest. Her ki warmed them from within.
Not a cure, relief.
Dare. The last one. Second transmission on the 7th day. Advanced fortification. Principles of siege engineering. Underground utilities. Methods of reinforcing walls using ki. And something else. So Gyeongho had imbued her with knowledge of the northern lands. A geological map he had reconstructed from the Imperial archives. The locations of ore veins, underground rivers, stone platforms suitable for building fortresses. 5 points. 5 ideal locations for 5 fortresses that would become 5 capitals. Dare. Bronze 290, 500, 800, 1100, 1400. Silver 1400. She stood up, placed her hands on the ground, and laughed. For the first time in 3 months, one of the 5 laughed. She said she could see it. 100 paces below them. An underground river. Clear. Wide. If they dug a well, the stream on the surface would become irrelevant. Let Moon-hyuk poison it as much as he wants. They would have their own spring. Out of reach. The 10th year. So Gyeongho lost consciousness for 6 hours. When he came to, all 5 were standing around him. Silent. He looked at them. 5 faces. 5 different expressions of a single feeling. Not pity. Duty. He tried to stand up. Yuna offered her hand. He pushed it away. He stood up on his own. Slowly. With difficulty. But on his own. 10 transmissions. 10 years. His body is 72 minus 10. Actually, 62. But the wear and tear was uneven. His heart was functioning at 40%. His left hand obeyed him only half the time. His right hand trembled constantly. His knees ached with every step. His vision was still normal, his hearing too. The mentor seal was working. The resonance drew chi from his students, 7% of each student's growth. Over 10 days, the 5 students had grown by a total of 10,000 units. 7% is 700. His hidden seal. Bronze 1 on the outside. Silver 2,800 on the inside. The resonance fed him slowly but steadily. It won't be enough to restore his body, but it's enough to keep him from dying. For now. Total after 10 days. Yuna, gold 4,000. Solmi, silver 2,200. Yeonhee, silver 1,100. Ha-in, silver 2,000. Dare, silver 1,400. The throne's weight of the princesses was growing. Yuna, 62. Solmi, 48. Ha-in, 44. Yeonhee, 38. Dare, 55. Dare had overtaken almost everyone. The well, the forge, the second wall, the third wall.
The registrar surveyed the infrastructure and calculated.
The total weight of the northern 5. 247, almost 250. Not enough. But on the pillar in the capital, that number blazed like a slap in the face to everyone who had declared them dead. So Gyeongho looked at his students, at the fortress, at the walls, at the smoke rising from the blacksmith shop, at the savages carrying ore, at the mercenaries sharpening their swords, at Taegel, who was drilling the fighters on the training grounds, at the dawn over the wildlands. And he said quietly, he said that Moon-hyuk would return tonight. He wouldn't poison the stream. He would see the well and realize that the fortress was ready. And then he'll do the only thing he can. He'll come for him, for the old man. Because Moon-hyuk is smart, and a smart assassin doesn't strike at the fingers, he strikes at the head. and the head of the Northern Five is Bronze One, who sits by the fire drinking tea. Moon Hyuk didn't come at night. He came at dawn, when the guards were changing shifts, when the campfires were dying down, when the eyes are tired of the darkness but haven't yet adjusted to the light. Gold 6200 moved faster than Yeon-hee could detect. But Yeon-hee wasn't asleep. She wasn't sensing him. She was sensing a void. A spot in the air where there should be sound, but there isn't. A place where the wind curves around something invisible. She whistled. A short signal. A code. Yuna was on her feet in a second, sword in hand. Her eyes were open. Her body was in a fighting stance before her brain had even woken up. Gold 4000 reacted on the level of reflexes hardwired into the transmissions. Moon Hyuk didn't head for the wall. He didn't head for the gate. He was walking straight through the camp, through the people, past the sleeping savages, past the mercenaries, alone, without the other 5 blades. So Gyeongho was right. A smart assassin strikes at the head. The old man was sitting by the campfire, as always, a cup in his right hand, his left hand tucked into his sleeve. He saw Moon Hyuk. The scales reading worked even against the gold class. The golden silhouette moved across the camp's silver expanse like a line of fire. Seo Gyeongho didn't move. He took a sip of tea. Bitter. Moon Hyuk stopped 5 steps away. He shed his disguise. He appeared out of thin air like a materialized nightmare. Black cloth. A black mask. Only his eyes were visible, cold and professional. He looked at the old man, Bronze One, shaking hands, a wrinkled face, eyes that had seen right through his camouflage. Moon Hyuk asked quietly. He asked who he was. Seo Gyeongho replied that he was a teacher. Moon Hyuk said there were no Bronze One teachers. Bronze Ones don't build fortresses in 3 months. They don't turn girls into gold. They don't lure 50 mercenaries into a swamp. Seo Gyeongho took another sip. He said it happened. He said the world was big. There's a lot in it that doesn't exist until you see it. Moon Hyuk stood motionless. His hand was on the hilt of his blade. One movement. Half a second. Bronze One would die before the cup hit the ground. But he didn't move. Seo Gyeongho set the cup down. He looked at the assassin and told him 3 things. First, Park Sung-min paid for the contract with the Chancellor's money. Money not from the treasury, from contraband silver. If the Black Lotus kills the princess and it comes to light, the guild will become an accomplice to smuggling. The Imperial Court doesn't investigate. The Imperial Court wipes the slate clean. All 7 seals of the blades will be extinguished. Second, he knows that the second blade is wounded. The wound on his forearm has become infected. Without key treatment, he'll lose his arm in a week. So Gyeongho has a healer. Dare knows the herbs. Yeon-hee knows where they grow. Treatment in exchange for information. Third, and he said this quietly, almost in a whisper, the Black Lotus contract is worth a favor. The marriage of Park Sung-min to the Chancellor's daughter. This marriage elevates Park Sung-min to platinum 12,000 politically. In a year, he'll become more powerful than the Chancellor needs him to be. The Chancellor understands this. The Chancellor always hedges his bets. So there's a second contract somewhere. On Park Sung-min himself. Or on his future wife. Or on both of them. And this contract will cost more. Moon Hyuk didn't move a muscle. But his eyes changed. For a single second, a micro-movement of his pupils. Seo Gyeongho saw it. The scales reading showed more than just numbers. It revealed lies. And the truth. Moon Hyuk didn't know about the second contract. But he believed it existed because he knew the Chancellor. And he knew that the Chancellor always hedges his bets. Silence. The fire crackled. Somewhere beyond the fortress walls, a savage snored. Moon Hyuk removed his hand from the hilt, slowly. He said that the second blade would die without treatment. He said he wanted information. What kind exactly? Seo Gyeongho replied. Park Sung-min's itinerary. His schedule for the next 3 months. Security. Number of guards. Composition. Weak points. Moon Hyuk was silent for a moment. Then he said that this was a betrayal by the client. Seo Gyeongho shook his head. He said the contract was terminated. The target was gone. The princesses were alive. The decoys were dead. The contract had failed. The Black Lotus Guild never fails contracts. But this one had. So the contract was over. And after the contract, information is a commodity, not betrayal. Business. Moon Hyuk stared at the old man for a long time. Then he said one sentence. He said he'd met many dangerous people in his career. Platinum, Jade, people whose names alone make the air tremble. But this old man, Bronze One, frightened him more. So Gyeongho didn't reply. He raised his cup, finished his tea. Moon Hyuk vanished. He dissolved into the dawn light like smoke. An hour later, Yeon-hee reported. The assassins were gone. All 6 of them. Heading south, toward the ridge, from the wildlands. Yuna stood nearby, her sword in its sheath. She hadn't fought today. She asked the old man why he'd taken the risk, why he'd sat alone in front of gold 6200. So Gyeongho replied that he hadn't taken a risk, that he'd seen Moon Hyuk's numbers. Gold 6200, his body worn out, with a wounded comrade, with a failed contract, with doubt. A man like that doesn't kill an old man. A man like that listens. Yuna shook her head. She said the teacher trusted the numbers too much. So Gyeongho smiled. He said numbers don't lie. People lie. Numbers don't. Solmi approached. She said that if Moon Hyuk's information was correct, then in 2 months, Park Sung-min would be at a wedding ceremony at Chancellor Hwan's residence. Maximum security, but maximum publicity. Half the court would be in attendance. The registry's records would be updated in real time. The entire continent would see the numbers. So Gyeongho nodded. Exactly. Publicity is an arena, and an arena is needed by those who want everyone to see their victory. He looked south. 2 months. In 2 months, the princesses must come of age. The fortress must be strengthened. The weight of the throne must exceed 100 for each of them. 5 names on the pillars. 5 numbers above 100. 5 living princesses whom the empire had declared dead. And an old man who is no longer there. On the registry pillar in the capital. At this very moment, priest Yoon Sung-ho was updating the morning cycle's data. His hand froze. The throne weight column. Cho Yoon, 62. Height up by 14 in a week. Im Da-rae, 55. Height up by 12. Han Sol-mi, 48. So Ha-in, 44. Baek Yeon-hee, 38. They're all growing, continuously, without stopping. Yoon Sung-ho set down his brush. He looked at the chart. He did the math in his head. At the current rate, in 2 months, all 5 will cross the 100 threshold. All 5 will officially reclaim the title. Automatically. The registry doesn't ask the emperor. The registry decides on its own. Yoon Sung-ho stood up. He walked toward the door. He stopped. He turned toward the pillar. He bowed. He didn't know to whom he was bowing. To the pillar, the registry, or whoever stands behind the 5 rising numbers in lands that don't appear on the map. 2 months. 60 days. So Gyeongho counted each one. Not because he was in a hurry, because his body was counting for him. His left hand gave out in the 4th week. Not a tremor. A complete loss of control. His fingers hung like dead branches. He tied his hand to his body with a strip of cloth and hid it under his cloak. His right hand still worked. For now. Over those 2 months, the fortress had ceased to be a fortress. It had become a city. Dare had raised 5 rings of walls. The outer wall was 4 men tall. Compacted earth and stone, compressed by her key to a density that no battering ram could breach. Inside the walls, barracks for 300 men. A smithy with 3 forges. Warehouses. A market. Yes, a market. Because Hain had struck a deal with a trade caravan from the southern borderlands. A merchant named Ryu Danho. Silver 400. Not a fighter, a merchant. He arrived with 10 wagons. He brought cloth, salt, grain, spices. He took northern iron away. The first caravan. Solmi calculated the markup. Triple. Northern iron cost 3 times as much on the southern markets as local ore, and it bypassed Chancellor Huan's customs, through the Black Fang Pass. The very same route she had predicted in the first week. The road to the pass was built by Teagle's mercenaries and the savages of Wolfsbone. 40 days. Rough, rocky, but passable for wagons. Solmi stood at the entrance to the fortress and counted the sacks in Ryu Danho's caravan. Each sack was a unit of weight. Each unit of weight was a line on the pillar. She looked at the old man. She said that a second caravan would leave in a month, a third in 2 months. By the end of the year, the northern trade route would be yielding more than 2 out of the Chancellor's 7 of the Chancellor's routes. Seo Gyeongho nodded. A financial stranglehold. Slow. Imperceptible. By the time the Chancellor realizes he's being suffocated, it will be too late. Yeon-hee returned from a long reconnaissance mission on the 30th day. She had gone south, beyond the range, into the territory of the Empire. Alone. 1100 sensor type. Invisible. Inaudible. She spent 10 days in the border towns. Listening. Watching. Memorizing. She brought back 3 things. First, a map of Park Sun-min's troop dispositions along the border with the ridge. 800 fighters. Silver class. 30 gold-class officers, ranging from 5,000 to 6,500. Park Sun-min himself is currently in the capital, preparing for his wedding. Second, a rumor. A rumor is circulating in the palace that Grand Duchess Mo Sortion is seeking contact with the Northern Five, secretly, through intermediaries. Her messenger still hasn't arrived, stuck at the border. Park Sun-min is intercepting all mail from the north. Third, name. Hwang Min-ji, the Chancellor's daughter. Park Sun-min's fiancée. 19 years old, silver 600. They say she doesn't want to get married. They say she cries at night. They say the Chancellor has locked her in the East Wing and assigned 4 female guards to watch over her. Seo Gyeongho listened. He closed his eyes. He opened them. He said they needed to rescue the messenger Mo Sortion, and they needed to send a letter to Hwang Min-ji. Ha-in looked up. She asked why. Seo Gyeongho replied that a fiancé who doesn't want to get married is a crack in the wall. And cracks must be widened, not broken, widened, until the wall collapses on its own. Ha-in nodded. She wrote the letter that very evening. Seo Gyeongho dictated every word. No threats, no promises. Just facts. That the Northern Five exist. That the 5 princesses are alive. That there is a place in the north for those suffocated by the walls of a stranger's home. And one phrase at the end. A phrase that Seo Gyeongho once wrote in the Imperial Decree on the Rights of Noblewomen, an edict he himself had drafted 30 years ago. Paragraph 17. Any woman of silver rank or higher has the right to annul her marriage contract if her throne weight exceeds that of her fiancé at the time of the ceremony. A law, still in effect, written by the hand of Seo Gyeongho, signed by the previous emperor, not repealed by the current. Because no one remembers paragraph 17, except for the man who wrote it. Yeon-hee took the letter away the next day, along with her second assignment, to find the messenger Mo Sortion and bring him to the north, alive. The 5th month was drawing to a close. The registry pillars in the capital had been updated. The weight of the throne. Che Yun, 94. Han Solmi, 82. Baek Yeon-hee, 71. So Ha-in, 78. Im Dae-rae, 89. Dare had almost caught up to Yoon. Infrastructure yielded more weight than combat. The walls fed the registry more voraciously than swords. There were only weeks left until the 100 threshold. Priest Yoon Sung-ho looked at the pillar every morning. He no longer kept his journal in secret. He kept it openly, because half the court stood behind him, watching. Park Sun-min was watching too. He stood in the throne room in his new jade robes next to Chancellor Huan. The wedding was in 3 weeks. After the marriage, his throne weight would jump to a level that would crush any one of the 5. But the combined weight of the 5 princesses was growing so fast that if he didn't strike now, In half a year, they would surpass him combined. He turned to the chancellor. He said he needed an army. Not mercenaries, not assassins. An imperial punitive army. 1,000 soldiers. With an imperial mandate. The chancellor looked at him. He asked on what grounds. Park Sun-min said, on the grounds that the 5 exiles had established an illegal state on territory that formally belongs to the empire. The wildlands are not independent. They are the imperial periphery. Any construction without the throne's sanction is treason. The chancellor was silent. Then he smiled. He said the mandate would be granted, after the wedding, not before. Park Sun-min clenched his teeth. After the wedding meant after he became a son-in-law. After his hands were tied. The chancellor isn't a fool. The chancellor is tying him down first. Then he'll give him an army. So the army will be on a leash. So the chancellor will hold the leash. Park Sun-min looked at the registry pillar, at the numbers that crept upward every week. And he thought of the old man, of Bronze 1, about the man sitting by the fire drinking tea. And every day his puppets grow stronger. He must kill the old man. Personally, without an army, without assassins. Cross the ridge himself, find him, kill him, before it's too late. But the wedding is in 3 weeks, and the chancellor won't let him go. Park Sun-min stood in front of the pillar, and for the first time in 4 years, felt something he hadn't felt since he was a boy in a border village. Fear. In 2 months, the fortress will become a city. Dare is building 5 rings of walls. Solmi is launching trade in northern iron through the Black Fang Pass, bypassing the chancellor's monopoly. Yeonhee, an intelligence agent from beyond the ridge, brings a map of Park Sung-min's troops and information about Hwang Min-ji, his fiancé. Seo Gyeongho uses his own long-forgotten law, paragraph 17, as a weapon and sends a letter to his fiancé. The throne weight of the princesses is approaching 100. Park Sung-min demands an imperial army from the chancellor. The chancellor promises a mandate after the wedding. Park Sung-min feels fear for the first time. The 100 threshold. The registry was updated on the first day of the 6th month. Priest Yoon Sung-ho stood by the pillar and read aloud. His voice did not tremble. He had rehearsed. Chue Yoon-ah, throne weight, 112. Im Dae-rae, 108. Han Sol-mi, 101. So Ha-in, 97. Baek Yeon-hee, 93. 3 out of 5 had crossed the threshold. The names returned to the Temple Chronicles, automatically. The registry did not ask. The registry decided. Yuna, Dare, Solmi. The 3 princesses who had been declared dead now officially held a title. The right to land. The right to vassals. The right to a voice in the middle tower. The hall buzzed. The courtiers shouted. Not out of joy, out of shock. 2 had not yet crossed the threshold, Hain and Yeon-hee. But at the current pace, it would take a week, maybe 2. Park Sung-min stood in a corner of the hall, pale, fists clenched. Chancellor Hwang Yeon-chol stood beside him. His face was inscrutable. He turned to the general. He said quietly that the wedding would take place in 9 days, and that the military mandate would follow immediately afterward. Not in a month, immediately. Because 3 titles were no longer just a rebellion by 5 ragged outcasts. 3 titles were a political reality, and that reality had to be erased before the southern kingdoms began negotiations. Park Sun-min nodded. 9 days. He could endure it. 9 days. In the north, at the fortress. He hadn't celebrated with Gyeongho. He stood by the wall and gazed at the horizon. Yuna approached. She said that 3 out of 5 were already over the threshold. That in another week, all 5 would be in the chronicles. The old man nodded. He said that was good, but not enough. A weight of 100 is the right to a title, the right to land, the right to a voice, but not the right to life. The imperial army will crush a fortress with a weight of 100 like a boot crushes a bug. We need more, and we need it faster. He turned to Yuna. He said the time had come for the third transfer. Yuna froze. She knew what that meant. Another year, maybe more. Maybe not a year, but something worse. An arm, a leg, eyes. She said no. For the first time in 6 months, she said no to her teacher. She said he would die. Gyeongho looked at her, calmly. He said he would die anyway. The only question was when and what would remain afterward. If he died now, 5 silver princesses and 1 gold 4,000. The Imperial Army would wipe them out in a day. If he lives another 3 months and carries out his plan, 5 gold princesses, each weighing 1,000. The army won't be able to handle it. The Chancellor will be afraid. The Emperor will have second thoughts. 3 months of life for 3,000 years of the future. A good trade. Yuna stood there, looking at him. There were no tears. Yuna hadn't cried since the day she killed the chieftain with a rock. She clenched her fists, unclenched them, nodded, turned her back and walked away. He conducted the transmission with Gyeongho that evening, Yuna's third. He invested the last of what he had in the fighter, not sword technique. Seal techniques. Key control at a level known only to those bearing jade and higher. Concentration. Dispersion. Explosive release. A protective cocoon. Things the old man didn't learn from Imperial textbooks. Things the mentor seal preserved as primordial knowledge. The knowledge of the civilization that created the registry 1,000 years ago. Yuna. Gold 4,000. 4,500. 5,000. 5,500. 6,000. The gold 6,000 threshold. The level of the Black Lotus assassins. 6,500. 7,000. Gold 7,000. The level of the Empire's generals. Park Sun-min's level. 7,200. 7,500. 8,000. Gold 8,000. Yuna stood there. Her eyes were closed. The air around her vibrated. Ki radiated like heat from a blacksmith's forge. The guards on the wall retreated. The savages fell to their knees. Tegel turned pale. He was silver 1,900. He felt the pressure of gold 8,000 like a physical weight on his shoulders. The 11th year burned away. He fell with Gyeongho. He didn't sit down. He didn't slump. He fell, face first into the ground. Yuna turned around. She caught him. She turned him over.
The old man's eyes were open. His right arm wouldn't move. His left hadn't moved in a long time. Both arms were dead. His legs. He tried to move them. The right one responded. The left one didn't. He lay in his student's arms and looked up at the sky. He spoke softly. He said he no longer needed his arms. He needed his mouth and his head. Let them carry the rest. Yuna lifted him up. She carried him to the shelter. He weighed as much as a child. 72 years of a body, minus 11. His bones had shriveled. His muscles had wasted away. Silver 2800 gave off a resonance from the hidden ones. But Silver 2800 in a body that's falling apart is like a suit on a hanger. The form is there. The substance is not. That night, Yeon-hee came, from beyond the ridge, with 2 people. The first, a messenger from Grand Duchess Mo Soryeon, a young man, silver 500, beaten up. He'd been intercepted by Park Sun-min's patrol. Yeon-hee got him out of custody, quietly, no bloodshed. A silver 1100 sensor type against 4 silver 800 guards at night. They didn't even wake up. The second, a woman, short, thin, silver 600, pale face, red eyes from crying. Hwang Min-ji, the Chancellor's daughter.
Park Sun-min's fiancé. She read Ha-in's letter, read paragraph 17, and ran away, through the window, at night, with a single change of clothes and her mother's locket around her neck. Her guards were silver 900, 4 of them. But Hwang Min-ji was the Chancellor's daughter. She knew the guard shift schedule. She knew the security's weak spots. She knew the secret passage in the East Wing that her mother had shown her as a child. She left. She found Yeon-hee. Or rather, Yeon-hee found her.
because a silver 600 girl in imperial robes on the northern road at night is not exactly something you can fail to notice. Seo Gyeongho was lying in hiding, armless, one-legged, alive. Ha-in led Minji to him. The girl looked at the old man, at the wreck, at Bronze 1. She had expected to see a general, or a mage, or at least a strong man. What she saw was a sack of bones with burning eyes. Seo Gyeongho looked at her. Libra's reading, silver -600. But his key channels, interesting. Wide. Very wide. His potential is higher than Ha-in's, higher than Solmi's. He asked one thing. He asked what she wanted. Minji replied that she didn't want to be a commodity. Seo Gyeongho nodded.
He said there were no commodities in the north. There are people. And he asked if she wanted to become the sixth. Minji didn't understand. Ha-in explained. The sixth disciple. The sixth seal of the oath. Minji was silent for a minute. Then she knelt down. She said one word. Master. Seo Gyeongho looked at Ha-in. He said that he wouldn't be the one to perform the transfer. He can't do it anymore. His hands are dead. But the mentor seal can be transferred through an intermediary. If Ha-in places her hand on Minji's head and Seo Gyeongho directs the flow through Ha-in, the knowledge will pass. There will be a loss of effectiveness, 50%, but the old man won't lose his life. Ha-in turned pale. She asked if that meant the loss would become at her expense. Seo Gyeongho shook his head. He said no. The intermediary doesn't pay the price. The intermediary facilitates the transfer. The payment comes from the resonance reserve, from the accumulated 7%. He will lose not years, but ki. His hidden silver 2,800 will drop, perhaps to 2,000, perhaps lower. But his life will remain intact. Hyun placed her hand on Minji's head. Seo Gyeongho closed his eyes. He directed the flow. Diplomatic protocol. Judicial procedures. Imperial law. Every law he had written over the past 30 years. Minji twitched. Her eyes rolled back. The seal flared. Silver 600. 800. 1,000. 1,200. Silver 1,200. Seo Gyeongho's resonance dropped. 2,800. 2,400. 2,100. 1,800. It stopped at 1,800. Enough. Minji opened her eyes. She looked at her hands. She looked at the old man. And for the first time in many months, she smiled. She said she could see everything. Every law. Every loophole. Every clause the Chancellor had violated over the past 20 years. Park Sun-min's wedding is in 7 days. If Minji doesn't show up at the ceremony, the marriage won't take place. If the marriage doesn't take place, Park Sun-min's political clout won't grow. His mandate for thee is tied to the marriage. No marriage, no army. The Chancellor is furious. Park Sun-min is in a panic, and the 5 princesses continue to grow. The wedding didn't take place. Park Sun-min stood in the ceremonial hall in his jade-colored groom's attire and waited. An hour, 2, 3. The bride did not come out. The guards found an empty room, an open window, fingerprints on the windowsill. Chancellor Hwang Yeon-cheol entered the hall 4 hours later. His expression was such that the courtiers parted to let him through. Platinum 15,000. When the Chancellor was angry, the air around him grew heavy. Ki felt a tightness in her chest. It was hard to breathe. He looked at Park Sun-min. He said 2 words. Find her. Park Sun-min nodded. His face was pale. His jaw was clenched. He left the hall. His aide followed behind him. The general ordered the garrison to be mobilized. Block all roads to the north. Comb through every village. Find the Chancellor's daughter, alive. The aide ran off to carry out the order. Park Sun-min was left alone in the hallway. He punched the wall with his fist. The stone cracked. Gold 7200. The wall couldn't hold. He knew. He knew where she was. The north. Where else? The old man hadn't just taken his fiancée from him. He'd taken his army. He'd taken his mandate. He'd taken the balance. He'd taken his future. Bronze 1. A ruin. An old man with no arms, no legs, and no name. And he was still 3 moves ahead. Park Sun-min closed his eyes. He remembered. 20 years ago, the old man sits at the table. The boy, Park Sun-min, sits across from him. Between them is a baduk board. The old man places a stone. The boy thinks. He places his own. The old man smiles and says the boy is good. But he always looks at the last move. You have to look 3 moves ahead. Park Sun-min opened his eyes. 3 moves ahead. The old man hadn't changed. Same style, same game. Only the board was bigger, and the stones were heavier. He summoned a messenger. He wrote a letter. Not to the chancellor, to the emperor. Personally, to Lee Ji-won. Platinum 22,000. He wrote that the exiled princesses had established a state in the wildlands, that their influence was growing, that soon they would enter the middle tower with the right to vote, that his former teacher, Seo Gyeongho, was alive and behind it all, that paragraph 17 of imperial law had allowed the chancellor's daughter to escape, that if the emperor did not intervene personally, in a year, the northern 5 would be stronger than any of the 9 houses. In 2 years, stronger than half of them. In 3. He didn't write in 3. Let the emperor figure that out for himself. The messenger left. Park Sun-min sat down. He took a paduk board out of the cupboard. He placed the first stone. Black. He looked at the empty board and began to calculate, move by move, just as the old man had taught him. Up north, Seo Gyeongho lay on a stretcher. Yuna carried him, every day, from place to place, to the wall where he needed to look, to the smithy where he needed to give instructions, to the market where he needed to talk to the merchants. His legs wouldn't work. His right leg could barely move. The left one was dead. Both hands were dead. But his head worked, and his mouth worked, and his eyes worked. He saw the numbers of every person in the fortress. He saw the flows of ki. He saw the weak spots in the walls. He saw the lies in the eyes of the new savages who came every week. He spoke, and the world moved. Minji settled in within a week. Silver 1200, with her legal knowledge, turned out to be a game changer. She drafted a code of laws for the Northern 5. Not imperial, their own, based on imperial law but with amendments. Paragraph 1. Every resident of the northern lands has a seal. Every seal has a weight. Every weight is taken into account. Not a title, not blood. Weight. The savages heard this and fell silent. Then they began to murmur. Then, one of the elders of the Stone Raven tribe knelt before Minji and asked that his name be recorded first in the new chronicles. His seal, 900 silver. His name in the chronicles, for the first time in his clan's entire history. Cain was working with the messenger Mo Soryon. The messenger brought more than just words. He brought a proposal. The Grand Duchess proposed a secret alliance. The Eastern House would not oppose the Northern 5. In return, the trade route through the Black Fang Pass would be opened to the Eastern House's caravans. A 20% discount on Northern iron. Cain consulted with Solmi. Solmi thought for 2 hours. Then she said, 15%, not 20. And a reciprocal condition. The Eastern House will vote to recognize the Northern lands at the next council in the Middle Tower. Cain wrote the reply. The messenger left. Meanwhile, Yeonhee created something that had never existed in the wildlands. An intelligence network. 12 agents. 4 in the border towns. 2 at the Chancellor's court through Minji's contacts. 2 in Park Sun-min's inner circle through Taegul's former mercenaries. 4 along the trade routes. Information flowed like a river. Every day, Yeonhee brought a report to the old man. Every day the map changed. The 6th month came to an end. The registry pillar was updated. All 5 princesses had surpassed the 100 mark. Ha-in, 104. Yeonhee, 102. Rang-yi, Yuna. Gold, 8,000. Solmi. Silver, 2,200. Hayun. Silver, 2,000. Yanhee. Silver, 1,100. Dare. Silver, 1,400. Total weight of the Northern 5, 587. Not much. But on the pillar next to the numbers was a note from the priest. Growth rate, percent per month, 18. No province in the empire grew faster than 3%. Yoon Sung-ho stood by the pillar. Behind him was a crowd of courtiers. Among them, quiet, unobtrusive, the maid of Grand Princess Mo Soryeon. She was memorizing the figures, every single one. That evening she would report, and the princess would say once again what she had been saying since day one. It's not the girls, it's him. Emperor Lee Ji-hwan read Park Sun-min's letter. He set it aside. He picked up a cup of jasmine tea. He took a sip. He set it down. He read it again. Seo Gyeongho is alive.
7 months ago, he had personally reduced the old man to nothing. Torn off his insignia, erased his name, sent him to die. And the old man was alive. Not just alive, he had built a state, out of 5 puppets and frozen earth. The emperor wasn't angry. The emperor was intrigued. Platinum 22,000, the strongest on the continent. He could have crushed the Northern 5 with a single decree. He could have sent in the army. He could have wiped them all out at once using the registry function, which was accessible only to the throne bearer. He could have. But he didn't. Because Lee Ji-hwan was, first and foremost, a player. And a player doesn't break the board when the game gets interesting. He summoned the priest Yoon Sung-ho. The priest arrived. He knelt down. The emperor asked one thing. He asked what would happen if the Northern 5 continued to grow at their current rate. The priest replied, at a rate of 18% per month, the total weight of the 5 will reach 2,000 in 8 months, 5,000 in 14, 10,000 in 18. By the end of the 3rd year, the total weight could exceed 25,000. The weight of the Hwagyong Empire, 50,000. Half. In 3 years, the 5 exiled princesses will be worth half the empire. The emperor finished his tea. He said it was intriguing. He dismissed the priest. He summoned the chancellor. Hwang Yeon-cheol entered. Platinum, 15,000. The gray cardinal. His face was inscrutable. But if Seo Gyeongho had seen him now, he would have spotted red spots of lies hovering over every other word. The emperor said he knew about the Northern 5. He knew about the cancelled wedding. He knows about his daughter's escape. The chancellor remained silent. He did not deny it. He did not make excuses. He waited. The emperor said he would not provide an army. The chancellor looked up. The emperor explained. An army means war. War means the attention of the southern kingdoms. Attention means interference. The southern kingdoms are waiting for a pretext to stab Hwagyong in the back. A war with its own exiles is the perfect pretext. Instead of an army, the emperor will do something else. He would invite the Northern 5 to the annual council in the Middle Tower, officially, as rulers of territories with a weight exceeding 100. By law, they have the right. By law, he is obligated. And at the council, in full view of the entire court, all 9 houses and all the ambassadors, he would destroy them, not with a sword, but with words. He would prove that the northern lands are illegitimate, that the seals were nullified and restored through fraud, that the old man used forbidden techniques, that the princesses are not rulers but rebels, and he will nullify them again, publicly, before the entire court, so that no southern king could say that Hwagyong executes without a trial. The chancellor listened. Then he bowed. He said that the emperor's wisdom was boundless. He left. In the corridor, his expression changed. A public trial, a public annulment. The emperor thinks he's in control of the situation. But the chancellor knew one thing. Seo Gyeongho had been drafting laws for 30 years. Every law, every paragraph, every loophole. If the old man is alive, and if the old man is going to court, he's not going there to lose. The chancellor returned to his chambers. He summoned his personal secretary. He ordered the archives to be brought up, all the decrees from the past 30 years, every paragraph signed by Seo Gyeongho.
Find the traps. Find the hidden mechanisms. Find everything the old man might have woven into the legislation like a dormant virus. The secretary left and returned 3 days later, pale. He said he had found it. 14 hidden clauses in various decrees, each one harmless on its own. But together they created a legal framework whereby a territory with a total weight exceeding 505 independent title holders automatically received the status of a protectorate. Not a province, a protectorate. Autonomy, its own laws, its own court, and most importantly, the right to the territory's seal. A separate seal that was not subject to the empire, but only to the registry. The chancellor sat down. He looked at the papers. He had written these paragraphs with Gyeongho 20 years before the reset, long before he was betrayed, long before the princesses, long before the North. He had woven them into the laws simply because he could. Just in case. Or maybe not just in case. A chill ran down the chancellor's spine. Maybe the old man knew. Maybe he'd always known that one day he'd be betrayed. And he'd been preparing. He'd been preparing for 30 years. The invitation reached the northern fortress 2 weeks later, the imperial seal. An official summons to a council in the central tower. In 3 months. Seo Gyeongho lay on a stretcher when Ha-in read the scroll aloud. He listened, his eyes closed. When she finished, he smiled, for the first time in months. He said one word. Finally. Yuna stood nearby. Gold 8,000. She asked what finally meant. Seo Gyeongho opened his eyes. He said that 3 months was longer than necessary. In 3 months, the princesses would grow up. In 3 months, each of their weights would exceed 1,000. In 3 months, he would prepare each of them for what they must do in the central tower. Not to fight, not to wage war, to speak, to show, to prove, and to wipe out those who had wiped them out, with the same weapon, by the law he himself had written. Hain asked quietly. She asked if he would live to see that day. Seo Gyeongho didn't answer. He looked at the ceiling, at a crack in the stone. Minji sat in the corner, counting the paragraphs she saw in her mind. 14. She found all 14. The old man had sewn them in, 30 years ago, like a time bomb. She looked at the teacher, at the wreck on the stretcher, at the man who had nothing left but his head and his voice. And she thought that this man was more terrifying than anyone she had ever known. More terrifying than her father, more terrifying than the emperor, because they shattered the world with force. But this one rewrote its rules. The central tower. Morning. The registry hall. Marble pillars stand in a circle. 9 pillars, 9 provinces, and the 10th. Empty. Nameless. Numberless. It has stood for 1,000 years. No one knows why. The entire court. All 9 houses. Envoys from the 4 southern kingdoms. 300 courtiers. Priest Yun Sum-ho stands by the central pillar with a brush and a scroll. Emperor Li Ji-wan sits on the throne, a brazier nearby. A teapot with jasmine tea. Steam curls upward. Chancellor Hwang Yeon-chul stands on the right. His face is stony. Platinum 15,000. 14 scrolls in his sleeve. Counter-arguments for every hidden paragraph. He'd been preparing for 3 months. Park Sung-min stands on the left. Gold 7,200. New jade robes. No bride, no army, but with a sword, and with a hatred that warmed him better than any fireplace. The doors opened. The hall fell silent. 5 women entered, black armor, silver embroidery. Choe Yuna in the lead, gold 8,000. Her key filled the hall like a tidal wave. The courtiers stepped back. Not out of fear, out of physical pressure. Gold 8,000 is the rank of the empire's finest generals. And that number stood on the register's pillar opposite the name that had been erased a year ago. Han Solmi. Silver 3,500. From bronze 15 to silver 3,500 in 9 months. Impossible. Baek Yeon-hee. Silver 2,800. Quiet. Unobtrusive. Eyes that saw everything. So Ha-in. Silver 3,200. When she entered and spoke, she simply greeted the court. 3 dozen courtiers instinctively bowed. The resonance of the seal. Im Dare, silver 2600. The ground beneath her feet vibrated, quietly, barely perceptibly. But the priest by the pillar sensed it and looked down. Behind the 5 women came a 6th. Huang Minji, silver 1200. The chancellor's daughter. The chancellor saw her. For the only time that day, his face twitched. For a second. Then he was stone-faced again. Behind the 6 women, an old man, on a stretcher. Yuna carried him with one hand. With the other, she held a sword. A gray cloak. His lifeless arms were tied to his body. His left leg wouldn't move. The old man's face was the face of a corpse. Skin stretched tight over his bones. His lips were chapped, his eyes were sunken. But they burned. Bronze one on the seal. The entire hall saw it. Bronze one. A wreck. A servant. A nobody. Park Sun-min smirked. He spoke loudly so the entire hall could hear. He said the old man had dragged his puppets to the capital to die, and he reached for the sword. Choi Yuna didn't move. She simply looked at the registry pillar. Everyone looked over. Priest Yun Sung-ho was updating the data in real time. His brush moved. Numbers appeared. The weight of the throne. Choi Yuna, 5,200. Han Solmi, 4,800. Baek Yeon-hee, 3,900. So Ha-in, 4,500. Im Dare, 5,100. Total, 23,500. The hall exhaled. 23,500, almost half the weight of the empire. 5 women. 9 months ago, their weight was 1 each. Park Sung-min didn't have time to draw his sword. Not because Yuna stopped him, because his hand froze of its own accord. Gold 7,200 versus gold 8,000. His body knew arithmetic better than his mind. The emperor stood up, slowly. Platinum 22,000, the strongest on the continent. He looked at the old man on the stretcher, at bronze 1, with no arms and no legs. And for the first time that day, his expression changed. Not fear, recognition. He recognized the eyes. The very same ones that had looked at him a year ago when he tore down the jade emblem. Eyes that had promised cold tea. The emperor sat back down. He announced that the trial was beginning. Charge number 1, the illegal establishment of a state on imperial territory. So-hain stepped forward. Silver 3200. Her voice was steady. The resonance of the seal compelled everyone to listen. She began to speak. Every word was a paragraph of imperial law. Decree of the 47th year of King Cheongjong's reign. The wildlands are designated as territory open for free settlement. Any seal bearer with a weight above 100 may establish a settlement. The law is in effect. It has not been repealed. The court lawyer opened the scroll. He checked it. He turned pale. He nodded. It is in effect. Charge number 2. Fraudulent restoration of reset seals. Han Solmi stepped forward. Silver 3,500. She unfurled the scroll containing the calculations. The seals were not restored through fraud. The seals gained weight naturally. Territory, population, resources, trade. Every unit of weight is documented. Every transaction was recorded. Solmi had kept records from day 1. Every ingot of iron, every sack of grain, every treaty with a tribe. She placed a stack of scrolls an elbow high before the court. Documentation. Impeccable. Just as the man who had kept records for the entire empire for 30 years had taught her. Charge number 3. Use of prohibited techniques to accelerate the growth of the seal. Minji stepped forward. The chancellor's daughter. Silver 1200. She looked at her father. The chancellor did not look at her. Minji spoke. She cited the paragraph. Decree of the 12th year of Taehon's reign. The transfer of knowledge through the seal is not a prohibited technique. It is classified as mentorship. The institution of mentorship exists in imperial law. Seo Gyeongho himself had included it in the code, 32 years ago. Not for himself, for future teachers, for the educational system he wanted to create but didn't have time to. But the paragraph remained, and the paragraph worked. The chancellor pulled scrolls from his sleeve. 14 counter-arguments. He began to speak. So Ha-in listened. Minji listened. After each counter-argument, one of them responded. Calmly, precisely, like a scalpel on paper. The chancellor had prepared for 3 months. Seo Gyeongho had prepared for 30 years. The hall listened for 2 hours. The courtiers exchanged glances. The ambassadors from the southern kingdoms took notes. Priest Yoon Sung-ho stood at the table and held his breath. When the chancellor's final counter-argument was refuted, So Ha-in turned to the emperor and recited 14 paragraphs. One by one, slowly, clearly. Each paragraph from different edicts. Each signed by previous emperors, each in force. Together they formed a legal corridor, a territory with a total weight exceeding 500. 5 independent titled holders. Automatic protectorate status. Autonomy, the territory's own seal. The hall fell silent. The court lawyer checked each paragraph. Silently. Slowly. His hands were shaking. Each one was genuine. Each one was in effect. Each was signed by a legitimate authority. The emperor looked at So Ha-in, a 22-year-old girl who had just unraveled the empire's legal system, which had taken 300 years to build. And then he looked at the old man behind her, bronze one on a stretcher, and understood. Not the girl. Him. Baek Yeon-hee stepped forward. Quiet. Inconspicuous. The Queen of Shadows. She named 20 people. Courtiers who had taken bribes from the chancellor. Generals who had sold the heads of exiles to slave traders. Officials who had falsified death reports for the exiles. Each name backed by evidence. Every piece of evidence had been obtained by her network. 20 faces turned pale in the hall. 20 pairs of eyes darted toward the exits. The guards at the doors did not move. The guards were loyal to the emperor. Dare placed a sack before the throne. She untied it. Grain. Northern grain. Grown on land everyone had considered dead. She said one thing. She said that this year the empire would not reap a harvest in the northern territories, because the north had cut off the supply of fertilizer that Dare had begun exporting directly to the southern kingdoms 3 months ago, bypassing the empire. The chancellor turned pale, not from the accusations, but from the numbers. The north's fertilizer was flowing south. The southern kingdoms were buying from the 5. The empire was losing its harvest, and money, and influence. Khan Solmi unrolled the last scroll. I owe us. Purchased secretly through frontmen. Ryu Danho, Taegil, Yeon-hee's agents. 9 months of work. The Park family's debts. The chancellor's household's debts. The debts of half the court. Solmi read out the amounts. The hall fell silent. The figures were such that the silence became deafening. So Ha-in turned to the emperor and read the final document. A treaty. The 4 southern kingdoms officially recognized the northern P. Ratified, signed, sealed. Ambassador Tang Wei rose from his seat. He bowed to the emperor and confirmed it. That was it. Park Song-min stood as white as chalk. Yuna turned to him. Gold 8,000 versus gold 7,200. She did not draw her sword. She raised her hand. Ki surged forth. Not a strike, not an attack. A reset. The same gesture with which the old man had once blessed her apprentice stone in the wildlands. The seal on Park Sun-min's wrist crackled. He clutched his hand. He fell to his knees. The numbers crept downward. 7,200, 6,000, 5,000, 3,000, 1,000, 100, 10, 1. Bronze 1. Yuna said in an even voice. The name Park Sung-min, erased from the chronicles. Priest Yoon Sung-ho looked at the emperor. The emperor remained silent. The priest ran his brush across the pillar. He erased it. Park Sung-min was on his knees. Bronze 1. Nameless, rankless, weightless. He raised his head. He looked at the old man, the man who had once given him a piece of flatbread, at the man he had betrayed. Seo Gyeongho lay on a stretcher. He looked at his former student. He said nothing. There was no triumph. There was no pleasure. There was only weariness. And no pleasure. There was only weariness. And a sense of finality. The court was silent. The emperor sat on the throne. Seo Gyeongho quietly asked Yoon to bring him closer to the brazier. Yoona lifted the stretcher. She brought it over. The old man looked at the teapot. Jasmine tea. He had sent the finest leaves to the court a month ago, as a gift from the exiles. The courtiers accepted them, brewed them, drank them. This teapot had been standing here since morning. It had long since gone cold. Seo Gyeongho asked Da-rae to take the teapot and pour some tea. He had no hands. Da-rae poured it. Her hands did not tremble. A cup. Cold jasmine tea. Yoona carried the cup to the throne. She set it before the emperor. Seo Gyeongho spoke quietly, so that only his inner circle could hear. But the hall's acoustics carried the whisper to every corner. He said, "I promised. Drink." Lee Ji-hwan looked at the cup. He looked at the old man. Platinum 22,000 versus bronze 1. But right now, in this hall, bronze 1 carried more weight. The emperor took the cup and drank. Iced tea. The hall exhaled. The seal on Lee Ji-hwan's wrist cracked. The weight of the Hwagyong Empire's throne swayed. 50,000. 48,000. 45,000. 40,000. The vassals in the hall had already sworn allegiance, through debts, through contracts, through fear, through the recognition of the southern kingdoms. 35,000. 30,000. Not a reset, not a collapse, but the beginning of the end. The emperor set down an empty cup. He looked at the old man and nodded. Not a bow, not an admission of defeat, the nod of a player who had seen the final move and assessed it. So Gyeongho closed his eyes. He lay on a stretcher. His body was dying. His hands were dead. His leg was dead. His heart was beating like a clock whose spring was running out. But he was smiling. Not triumphantly, wearily. He had done what he was born to do a second time. 5 seeds had sprouted. 5 queens stand in the central tower. The enemy has been neutralized. The emperor drinks cold tea. 30 years of preparation. 9 months of execution. 11 years of his life given up. The game is over. And then the pillar cracked. The 10th pillar. The one that had stood empty for 1,000 years. Nameless. Numberless. The crack ran from bottom to top. Thin. Black. Something crept out of it. Not smoke. Not liquid. A thread. A black thread as thin as a hair. It stretched across the hall. Slowly. Purposefully. Toward Cho Yun's seal. Gold 8,000. The most powerful in the hall after the emperor. The most concentrated weight. The brightest target. Yoona sensed it. She stepped back. The thread stretched after her. The courtiers screamed. The priest Yoon Seong-ho fell to his knees. He knew. He had read the chronicles. 1,000 years ago, when the previous civilization fell, the pillars cracked just like this, and from the cracks came the beasts, creatures that fed on concentrated weight. The emperor had been resetting the exiles for years. He took their weight. He hoarded it. He concentrated it at a single point, within himself, within the throne. And every reset fed what lay dormant beyond the wall of the world. So Gyeongho opened his eyes. He knew. The mentor's seal knew. It had been created for this. Not for war against emperors, for war against what lies beyond the crack. The mentor's class. The seal's original function. To distribute power among many, not to concentrate it in one. When power is distributed, the creature cannot find a target. When it is concentrated, it is drawn to the light like a moth to a flame. Emperor Platinum 22,000 was a lighthouse. Yoona Gold 8,000 was a smaller torch. But the thread was drawn toward Yoona, not toward the emperor, because Yoona was standing closer to the pillar. So Gyeongho shouted. His voice was weak. His body was dying. But his voice cut through the hall like a blade. He shouted at Yuna to grab the thread, not to back down. She grabbed it. Yuna didn't understand, but she obeyed. 9 months of obedience. 9 months of trust. She reached out and clenched the black thread. No, it wrapped itself around her wrist. Yuna cried out. The key began to drain away. 8,000. 7,800. 7,500. Seo Gyeongho closed his eyes. He directed the resonance. All 5 students. 7% from each. The flow didn't go to him. It went through him, to Yuna. A recharge. The key stopped at 7,500. The thread froze. It didn't retreat, but it didn't advance either. A stalemate. Seo Gyeongho opened his eyes. He looked at his student and said quietly, so that only she could hear him. He said that the war had just begun, the one for which he had been reborn. The reckoning with the Emperor wasn't the end. It was just clearing the field. The true enemy stares out from a crack in a 1,000-year-old pillar. And this enemy isn't afraid of platinum, isn't afraid of gold. It fears only one thing: distributed power. 5 equal seals bound by an oath. The system that Seo Gyeongho restored from the ashes. Yuna held the thread. Her fist was clenched. Her teeth were gritted. Key vibrated. The 4 sisters stood behind her. Minji was the 6th. 6 seals, 6 streams. The resonance hummed like a taut string. The thread wavered. It receded an inch. Yuna looked at the crack in the pillar, at what was staring out from it, and she did not look away. Seo Gyeongho lay on a stretcher. He was looking at the students. 6 women in black armor. 6 seals. 6 future queens. He smiled, quietly, wearily. His hand, his dead, bound hand, twitched. His fingers stirred. Slightly. Almost imperceptibly. The resonance was working. Ki flowed from the students to him. 7% of the 6. 42% continuous background growth. His hidden seal. Silver 1,800. Quietly. Imperceptibly. It rose. 1,800. 1,900. 2,000. He won't die today. He won't die tomorrow. Maybe he won't die for another year, maybe 2. Enough. Enough to teach them what they need to know. Enough to seal the crack. Or to start a war. The hall of the middle tower was silent. The Emperor looked at the crack. At the thread. At the 6 women holding the line. At the old man on the stretcher who was smiling. The throne room smelled of jasmine. Cold jasmine.